They called him trash, a burden, someone who'd die quietly on the dungeon floor. But when the wolves tore into him, something else tore awake. A scavenger with power no job changer ever imagined, an ability born from corpses themselves. And the moment he realized what he could become, the entire abyss trembled. But that was only the first spark of a much bigger fire. And it all begins here.
Something was being crushed, and people were screaming for help, claiming that there was a demon beast, and urging others to run. Yi King, who was a level 0 abyssal scavenger, was injured and out of breath, and he seemed to be fending off something with his broken wooden sword while carrying a wooden shield. He was facing a spirit wolf, and the system just notified him that he dealt 0 damage to it. And he reasoned that since he couldn't deal any damage to a demon beast, he could only survive by picking up the trash left by the job changers. Yi King perceived that a level 0 member like him was considered a social burden. As the spirit wolf roared ferociously, Yi King surmised that he was a useless person. He charged forward with all he had, even though, in the back of his mind, he labeled himself trash. Suddenly, broken pieces of wood scattered all over the place. The spirit wolf broke Yi King's shield and bit his arm, and Yi King concluded that people could suggest that he lived like a piece of trash. Desperation filled Yi King's eyes, and he raised his broken sword and declared that he would never die like a piece of trash. The system notified Yi King that he had dealt a critical hit to the spirit wolf, and 1 point of damage had been dealt. At G-City, a man was standing in front of a rank C abyssal gate, and he was wielding a sword. Suddenly, a silhouette of someone running out of the abyssal gate while carrying a package could be seen. It was Yi King, a senior abyssal scavenger, and he was running for his life while carrying a package as a demon beast was chasing him. The man who was standing in front of the abyssal gate stepped forward to attack it, and help Yi King escape while berating him for being too slow. Yi King placed the box of crystal on the ground, and his job every day was to recycle and sort the trash left over by the job changers after fighting monsters. He wiped each of the crystals diligently, and he was convinced that they had to recycle them because the supervisors of the abyss don't allow those resources to leak out into the society of ordinary people because, after all, it was a C-rank crystal, and just one is worth over 50,000 yuan. Suddenly, someone stepped on the box Yi King was working with and called him a brat. It was the man from earlier. He announced that they would count the rewards for that dungeon one by one, so if he secretly hides any crystals, he will not only be fined a lot of money, but he will also be locked in jail. And as the man asked Yi King if he understood, Yi King assured him not to worry because he has done that job for many years, so he knows all the rules. Seeing more people running out of the abyssal gate, Yi King pondered that the job of an abyssal scavenger is usually done by those who are level 0, so if the front combat team didn't clean up the monsters thoroughly, the lives of the level 0 players in the rear could be in danger at any time, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that their job is worth one's life. Yi King calculated that the basic salary for returning from a dungeon was 300 yuan, and each scavenger could get 1,000th of the value of the trash picked up, which is about 600 yuan. And after deduction of the agency fee of 30%, the net earning was 540 yuan, which made Yi King sigh, and as he mentioned that he was still 670,000 yuan away from paying off his debt, so he needed to work harder. The man behind him overheard what he said. The man who overheard Yi King caught his attention by referring to him as a brat and conveyed that he had a significant job, mentioning that the commission was 3,000. He inquired if Yi King was interested, to which Yi King was surprised at the high commission. The man inquired of Yi King to confirm whether he wasn't always in need of money, so if he desired to depart, he should promptly catch up with the group, and Yi King relayed that he would indeed go and would catch up immediately. A bus traversed along the road. The group of abyssal scavengers that invited Yi King was in there, and they were talking about Xinfeng City's public shopping mall, which was the abyssal replica mentioned in the news earlier, which was reported to be in a rank. And as one of them remarked that it was no wonder that the rewards were so high because he heard that many groups were wiped out and not even one person made it out. Another man asked if it was another subcontract, to which another man responded that it was most likely. Yi King listened as a man mentioned that in addition to cleaning up, there was another important mission, bringing back the equipment of the teams that were wiped out, and another man cursed, saying that those old capitalists were really ruthless and vile. As the man asked who allowed the abyss to be supervised commercially by the capitalists, Yi King contemplated the business development. He recalled that 10 years ago, the abyssal gate descended from the void, and at that time, creatures of the abyss appeared in front of humans. Only those job changers had the special abilities to deal damage to the abyssal creatures. As the demon beasts died, people discovered that there were energy products, such as magic crystals in the abyss. But not only that, there were also various mysterious weapons and props. Therefore, just like discovering a new continent for the second time, mankind set off an uproar over the development of the abyss. A large number of traditional enterprises collapsed, and the social funds were used to support the new market, abyssal industries. And Yi King, who applied to those industries, only received apologies from them as they didn't accept level 0 members. Yi King's little sister was in a hospital, and as the doctor asked him to take her and leave if he couldn't pay soon because the hospital wasn't a welfare association, Yi King apologized to the doctor while requesting that he give him a few more days. In their residence, the landlord was demanding that he open the door as he owed him 2 months' worth of rent. Yi King attempted to apply to more places, but they simply tossed his application at him, informing him to leave as they didn't require him there, and as they instructed him to depart, they labeled him as trash. Yi King was in despair because the employment situation was unprecedentedly bleak for level 0 players who had not successfully changed jobs, and they had basically already become useless in society. Suddenly, a man handed him a card for a small loan that could be received in 1 second. The man caught Yi King's interest as he referred to him as a youngster and asked him if he was in need of money. As Yi King accepted the card, the man mentioned that the collateral was the most valuable thing he owned, his organs. Back in the present, Yi King let out a sigh. The man in front of him noticed him and said that he heard that he borrowed 1 million from a loan shark and lost everything while trading in the stock market, so if he couldn't pay back the money, he would sell a kidney. Yi King lowered his head as the man mentioned that it seemed like he had a little sister who relied on him to support her, and that the medical bills alone cost so much. As the bus approached the abyssal gate, the man commented that Yi King was the type of person who might as well die because, with the amount of burden he was with at that moment, he could only live like trash for the rest of his life. As the abyssal scavengers started disembarking the bus, the job changers above them cautioned that they were too slow, and advised them to keep up, as they wouldn't take responsibility if they perished. The abyssal scavengers began climbing up the piled rubble to reach the abyssal gate as the job changers urged to hurry. Yi King looked determined as he followed them. He looked up and concluded that, at that time, he needed to work hard to earn money and come back alive. Along with the other abyssal scavengers, Yi King entered the underground city, Xinfeng City Public Market, which was a B-rank abyss. Yi King looked around, and he realized that it was the first time he had come to a B-rank abyss. Suddenly, the job changers were on high alert when they heard noises. There were multiple spirit wolves roaring ferociously and running in their direction. A man who seemed to be a tank called for someone named Lao Chen. Lao Chen remarked that he knew, and as he stepped forward, he pointed out that it was just a pack of first-class spirit wolves. As one of the spirit wolves lunged towards Lao Chen, he unleashed balls of fire in both his hands. He hurled it forward and directed it towards the spirit wolves. A huge explosion occurred that startled the other spirit wolves. The spirit wolves immediately fled and hid in the dark. The man who was carrying a shield warned everyone not to let their guard down, as demon beasts could ambush them from any dark corners. A man with glasses inquired where their destination was. The man with the shield stated that it was the 5th floor, and the woman in their team mentioned that she didn't know if it was just an illusion. But the size of the first floor of the market seemed to have increased by more than 5 times, and the height had increased more than 3 times. The man with the glasses explained that it was abyssalization, where a replica is created based on the real world, but its internal structure has completely mutated, and he recalled asking why the group that was dispatched there left no traces behind and where the dead bodies were. He turned to command the abyssal scavenger and directed them to ensure they locate the dead bodies and not merely follow along. A job changer clicked their tongue, lamenting that regardless of where a level 0 goes, their sole utility is being trash, while Lao Chen crouched down to fix his shoelaces and Yi King was walking behind him, not paying attention to his whereabouts. Suddenly, the two of them were startled when Yi King collided with Lao Chen. Yi King fell face first on the ground, and Lao Chen rebuked him to watch where he was going. Lao Chen seized Yi King by the collar, and Yi King appeared frightened as he apologized to him. Lao Chen slammed Yi King against a railing, informing him that bumping into trash disgusts him and that he firmly believed he was a monster. While Yi King couldn't breathe in the hands of Lao Chen, the man with the shield advised Lao Chen not to bother with the scavengers because they were on a mission. Lao Chen glared at Yi King. He threw Yi King away and instructed that if he knew that he was trash, he should stay away from him. Yi King, who was lying on the ground, considered Lao Chen a prick who looked down on others. While Yi King was picking up his cap, Lao Chen was wondering if it was what was called a professional team. As Yi King followed the team from behind, he deemed himself a burden to society, a useless person, and trash were all the collective terms society has for level 0 members. But King looked unfazed by them, as he was convinced that they were unaware of something. As he continued to walk with the team, the system notified him that his experience value was at 99 out of 100 and that he was about to reach the next level, level 1. King and the other abyssal scavenger encountered another spirit wolf, and while the other scavengers screamed and ran away, King confronted it. He pondered if the spirit wolf was the one left behind in the front lines. The spirit wolf glared at King with menacing eyes, but the system indicated that it was already in critical health. King perspired as he glanced behind him. He spotted a level 1 wooden shield and wooden staff on the ground. As the spirit wolf pounced towards King turned towards the shield and staff, and he surmised that the spirit wolf was in critical health, so it departed from the group. As he grasped the weapons and evaded the spirit wolf's attack, King considered that the demonic beast presented exactly the opportunity he had been awaiting for so long. He planted his feet firmly into the ground to prepare to attack. King leaped off the ground while the spirit wolf was glaring at him. He was already midair, and the spirit wolf followed him with its gaze. King struck the spirit wolf with the staff on its head and urged it to perish. But to his surprise, his attack inflicted 0 damage, and the spirit wolf glared at him. The other abyssal scavenger queried if King was really that dumb, and they remarked that he hadn't been in the field for just a day or two, so he should know that only job changers could deal damage to the demonic beasts. As King blocked the spirit wolf's attack with his shield, he was contemplating that, of course, he knew. King was currently at level 0, with strength, agility, intelligence, will, constitution, and luck, all of which had 1 point. He dropped his bag and fled from the spirit wolf while musing that, with such weak attributes, he couldn't even break through the defense of the weakest monsters. King gritted his teeth as he ruminated that it was something he knew way better than anyone else. He jumped off and utilized the huge tree root as the driving force. Right after King leaped, the spirit wolf chomped on the tree root where he had just stepped. King looked determined as he swung the staff, and he pondered that he understood that fact so clearly, which is why he needed to use more strength. On the other hand, Lao Chen was surrounded by dead spirit wolves, and he chuckled as he remarked that once those level 0 members see the demon beast in critical health, they will be so scared that their legs will start shaking. The man with the shield remarked that they could earn a fortune just by casually killing a few monsters, but if the abyssal scavenger encounters a demon beast, they won't be able to do anything, so it was no wonder they are low-life trash. He stated that they would keep the most expensive items and give the rest to the scavengers, and he instructed his group to inform those individuals, the scavengers, to clean up. The woman and their team alerted their boss, the guy with the shield, that there seemed to be another beast that slipped away, and pointed in its direction. Suddenly, the screams of people who saw the demon beast could be heard, and they urged each other to run. One of the job changers mentioned that it was exactly as their boss had mentioned, while Lao Chen, who was walking away, pointed at a card and remarked that he had already requested the purple piece of clothing, so no one should take it. At a distance, the sound of commotion could be heard. The spirit wolf managed to shatter King's shield and bit him on the shoulders. Blood spurted out of King while he gritted his teeth to bear the pain. He raised the broken staff in his hand and declared that he wouldn't let himself die like trash. King thrust the broken staff into the spirit wolf's eye. The spirit wolf screamed in pain and released King while the system notified King that he had delivered a critical hit, so 1 point of damage was applied. The spirit wolf fell to the ground with a huge thud, and King was kneeling in front of it. King was already out of breath. Suddenly, he burst into laughter. He couldn't help but yell in his excitement. King suddenly halted, startled when he noticed someone approaching him. It was Lao Chen, and he taunted King, remarking that it seemed like the lone horse managed to kill one low-level wolf. He grabbed King's collar, and as he ridiculed him for acting like a hero, he asked him if he thought he had lived for too long. Lao Chen scolded King, stating that they had spent money not to retrieve his corpse while calling him a piece of trash, but King was smiling as he pondered that a job changer's career path isn't limited to one trajectory. King reflected that when one's experience accumulated to level 1, even a level 0 member could successfully switch jobs, and they could even obtain the hidden job more easily. Just to achieve that goal, King needed to devise ways to gain experience to level up. But for a level 0 member unable to deal damage to demon beasts, doing so was harder than ascending to the heavens. King had spent so many years facing risks and risking his life to search for a guaranteed critical hit to cause at least 1 point of damage. His points continued to rise, accumulating day by day. It increased from 3% until it reached its current point of 99%. As King plunged the broken staff into the spirit wolf's eye, the system notified him that he inflicted 1 point of damage to the spirit wolf, so he gained 1 experience point. King finally reached 100%, and he mentioned that it was the only way he could earn experience points. He grinned as he remarked that the conditions were met. The system notified him that his experience points had risen to 100 out of 100, so the conditions to level up had been fulfilled. Lao Chen was surprised, and he dubbed King a little rascal as he inquired whether he had managed to get a job shifting. King's body was surrounded by a tremendous amount of energy as the system congratulated him for achieving level 1. But King's jaw dropped when the system displayed to him that his job was Scavenger, and that he had already reached the max level at level 1. Lao Chen was also astonished by what he saw. Suddenly, snot came out of his nose, and tears welled up at the corners of his eyes as he attempted to stop himself from laughing. But he couldn't help it, so he laughed hysterically as he questioned what kind of bogus job changer it was, and he remarked that a trash picker was still a trash picker even after changing jobs, even questioning that the maximum level was level 1. Lao Chen apologized to King because he couldn't stop himself from laughing because it was a once-in-a-lifetime precious opportunity. Yet he managed to change his job to a trashy job that literally means trash, and he laughed as he relayed that it was great as it suits him perfectly. Calling him a level 1 scavenger, Lao Chen advised to listen up because his buddies were already gone, so the mission of cleaning up would be completed by him alone. Lao Chen began walking away, and he mentioned that he had to tell them something incredulous that happened. Meanwhile, King looked at his hands, and as he pondered the scavenger job, he wondered if it was weak. King pondered that if a scavenger's maximum level is 1, he couldn't utilize his level up attributes to grow. But as he turned to glance at the spirit wolf he recently conquered, he contemplated what a scavenger's ability could be. His eyes suddenly gleamed as he continued to gaze at the spirit wolf he had just overcome. The spirit wolf's carcass emitted a glow, and the system notified King that recyclable trash, a low-level spirit wolf corpse, had been discovered. King's eyes widened in surprise as the system inquired whether he would recycle the trash. He concurred with the system. Upon agreeing, his eyes glowed ominously, and multiple arms materialized behind him. King's eyes widened with surprise as he glanced behind him and spotted the arms. He observed as one of the hands seized the spirit wolf, and he pondered whether it was the abyssal scavenger's ability. As he continued to observe, King remarked that it had dragged the corpse in. The ability alerted King that the trash was disintegrating. King noted that it had finished when the ability notified him that the disintegration was complete. The hands presented King with a card and 3 glowing orbs as the system notified him that he had acquired Spirit Dash and 3 attribute points, and King was astonished that he could obtain cards and personal attribution points from corpses. He hastily accessed his system attribute board. King re-examined the card, and as the system apprised him that it required 3 agility points in order to use it, he remarked that it was only 3 agility points. He opted to allocate all the 3 attribute points he earned into agility. The system notified King that he had fulfilled the conditions to use Spirit Wolf, and it inquired whether he would utilize it. King instructed the system to employ it. He appeared relaxed as he shut his eyes while a bright green energy enveloped him and surged towards his body. King slowly reopened his eyes. While the green energy was still emanating from his body, King inquired if that was all and if there were no results. Suddenly, Lao Chen commanded him to move to where he was and clean immediately, to which King promptly agreed. But as he took a step forward, the force was so powerful that it destroyed the ground. King screamed as he was astonished that he was running at a tremendous speed. Suddenly, he stumbled on one of the huge tree roots. Loud crashing sounds could be heard, filling the area. King lay on the ground, looking so dizzy as he asked if it was the skill from earlier. The system notified King that the Spirit Dash was on cooldown, and he remarked that, of course, the skill was on cooldown. He sat up, closed his eyes, and let out a sigh. King slowly opened his eyes. Suddenly, his eyes widened in surprise when he noticed something. There were a lot of spirit wolf corpses in front of him with the system notification hovering over them, indicating that recyclable trash was found. And King observed that not only could he acquire attributes, he could also recycle the beast's power, so that was the sole ability of an abyssal scavenger with a maximum level of 1. The multiple arms began appearing behind King again, and he observed that the abyssal scavengers were clearly outrageously strong. The system notified King that he was awarded 4, 3, 3, and 2 points, respectively, while his ability continued to scavenge the spirit wolves' corpses. Upon being notified by the system that he gained 1 attribute point, he noticed that since the first time he touched the spirit wolf corpse, he acquired the ability of Spirit Dash. Furthermore, devouring the same type of corpse no longer bestowed new abilities. Additionally, the reward for consuming corpses of the same species gradually decreased, as his ability continued to grant him one attribute point. He inquired if skills necessitated the recycling of new corpses to obtain a one-time reward and mentioned that there were also benefits to absorption. King accessed his system attribute board and noticed that his attribute points had accumulated to 111 points. He appeared troubled as he asked which attribute he should increase, but he realized that there seemed to be no shortage of attribute points in the future. King grinned as he figured out what he would do. He remarked that he might as well distribute it evenly, and the system promptly notified him that all his attributes had increased. Presently, King holds the position of a scavenger at maximum level 1, and all his attributes are allocated 20 points each. Lao Chen and his team were preoccupied with fighting the other spirit wolves, and they remarked that it was fortunate as only those two were left. The lifeless spirit wolf collapsed on the ground after they defeated it. Their boss asked Lao Chen to confirm if he meant that King changed his job to a scavenger, and he stated that it was a hidden job he had never seen in the Great Job Change table before. The man with glasses let out a sigh and commented that every year there were hidden jobs listed in the Great Job Change table, but the most valuable job rankings hardly ever changed, as most of the so-called hidden jobs were mostly for laughs. Lao Chen pointed out that considering King's highest level was only 1, he was at most an F rank, just a bit stronger than a level 0 person, so there was really almost no change at all between them. Their boss advised them to disregard King and suggested they should move on, remaining vigilant. The members immediately agreed with their boss, unaware of the hole above them. Upon closer inspection of the hole, it seemed they were trapped inside a huge, hollow tree trunk. A few moments later, the boss stood in front of a huge vine growing in the middle of the shopping mall. He appeared astonished, and Lao Chen, who stood behind him, also appeared astonished. In the middle of the vine, corpses hung, and it appeared the vine was growing out of them. Their boss declared that the mission target had been found, as it was the remains of the captain of the falcon hunting group. Upon noticing the mound, the woman questioned how there could be a mound inside the mall, especially on the 5th floor. The man with glasses examined the corpses, and he mentioned that the abyssal transformation there had not exceeded 48 hours in total, yet the bodies had already dried up to that extent. He wondered if they were drained of their essence by some sort of magic. The boss stated that on their way there, they only encountered low-level zombified wolves, and the falcon hunting group was ranked B+, so he found it strange that all of them died there. Suddenly, his eyes widened in surprise as he refused to accept something he had just figured out. The boss noticed that there were many corpses beneath them as one of them grabbed his leg, and he mentioned that it was not just them there. Meanwhile, in the news, everyone was given urgent notice that an abyssal transformation had occurred at the People's Mall in Xinfeng City, which was initially assessed as a B-level mutation, where the Falcon Hunting Group has dispatched a team to enter, and the current number of missing people has reached 217. Back at the shopping mall, the boss commanded everyone on his team to fall back. He stated that it was an ambush, and they have been tricked, but they have already been surrounded by the corpses that emerged from the ground. While fighting the corpses, Lao Chen remarked that he was wondering why they hadn't found the bodies, and it turns out they were all gathered there and piled into a mountain of corpses. The boss, who was also fighting, added that the low-level demon beasts along the way were just bait to lure their prey deeper. They were surprised when the huge vine behind them began to move. The boss looked so horrified as he declared that it was the true master of that abyss. It was the high-level abyssal man-eating plant, which was almost a rank, and it was so huge. Lao Chen warned everyone to look above. Multiple corpses were charging towards them, and Lao Chen remarked that the entire falcon hunting group has become reanimated. On the other hand, King was busy recycling the spirit wolf, the team defeated earlier by the escalator. King laughed and remarked that he had unlocked an achievement when the system notified him that he had achieved the novice scavenger's milestone in the city test by recycling 50 bodies. The system notified King that he would receive a reward, and when King saw it, he looked at it expectantly and exclaimed that it was so exciting. It gave him an ordinary quality heart necklace of the lowest grade, a perfectly ordinary dagger. King looked so disappointed as he mentioned that its required level is 1 and pointed out that even the rewards for achievements in his profession were trash quality, which he remarked was interesting. Suddenly, King was startled by the rumbling sounds that filled the shopping mall. He seemed anxious as he looked behind him. As he heard more noises, King remarked that something was coming. The noises continued, and suddenly, a reanimated corpse charged towards King. Yi King was extremely startled, and he seemed frozen in place. But as the corpse attacked him, he managed to dodge it by jumping backwards. Yi King executed a backflip to increase his distance from the corpse, and the system notified him that he triggered an agility check as he successfully dodged with a flashy move. He cursed as he conceded that it scared him because he believed he was done for. Yi King examined his body, and he sensed that it had become more agile, so he wondered if it was due to the attribute points he added. He smiled as he clenched his fist, and he concluded that he had truly become stronger. Yi King was surprised when the corpse suddenly appeared in front of him. His eyes widened as he saw the corpse's sharp claws coming for his eyes. Luckily, Yi King managed to dodge that attack by sidestepping. Yi King stepped away from the corpse once again. He believed it was not just agility, he had also increased his strength. Yi King activated his skill, Spirit Dash. He swung his fist as he charged at the corpse, and he remarked that it was his turn. While in the back of his mind, he considered he was already a job changer. Yi King punched the corpse, and as he sent it flying, he asserted that it wouldn't just be D-level damage. Purple blood spurted out of the corpse, and as it trembled in pain, the system notified Yi King that he triggered a strength check as he caused a defense-breaking effect on the target, which increased his physical damage by 100%. Yi King smirked as he declared that the current version of himself had improved beyond comparison. Suddenly, the system notified him that, with 20 points in intelligence, his insight had significantly enhanced, allowing him to discover the target's hidden traps. The corpse was making strange noises, and as Yi King examined it, the system notified Yi King that it was a parasitized human essence level, and its weakness was fire and the next connecting part. The corpse continued making the strange noises, and as it charged forward to lunge at Yi King did the same. Yi King managed to dodge the corpse's attack by bending backward, and he countered its attack by attempting to kick its legs, but it jumped off the ground. As the corpse landed on the ground with its back turned towards Yi King took a step back. Yi King gathered energy in his hand, as he believed the neck was a weak point. He summoned the ordinary dagger, and as he struck the corpse from behind with it, the system notified him that he triggered a luck check, which activated the ordinary dagger's effect, and the target acquired the bleeding effect. Yi King immediately stepped away from the corpse after he delivered his attack. The vine at the neck of the corpse was sliced in half. Yi King loomed over the corpse with menacing eyes as the system notified him that he killed the parasitized human. His hands were covered in the purple blood of the parasitized human. The system notified Yi King that he triggered a constitution check, so his poison-resistant fruit corpse took effect, and the blood was expelled from his hands. Yi King smiled as he remarked that it was a success and that it was his first time killing something all by himself. The system notified Yi King that the parasitized human could be recycled and asked him if he would like to recycle it. Yi King gave orders to recycle, and the system notified him that the parasitized human was successfully recycled. The system informs him that he acquired a passive skill, Toxic Evolution, which reverses the effects of being poisoned and randomly transforms into effects beneficial to him, and it requires a constitution greater than or equal to 15. Looking at it, Yi King wondered if the effect of Toxic Evolution meant that he could drink spoiled potions as if they were tonics, and he ordered the system to use the skill card. The system notified Yi King that his passive skill, Toxic Evolution, was added, and he obtained 5 allocatable points. Looking at his system attribute board, all attributes were still at 20 points. Yi King brought out a spoiled potion, which was highly toxic. Looking at the skill card, Yi King mentioned that with Toxic Evolution, the severe poison would turn into a beneficial effect. He drank the spoiled potion and mentioned that he would see what happened. Suddenly, the system notified Yi King that due to Toxic Evolution, the critical effect was transformed into a healing effect. He also acquired Buff Essence, which doubles all his basic attribute values, and the effect would last for 10 minutes, which made Yi King look ecstatic as he mentioned that the damage he received had been recovered, and the randomly obtained effect was so strong that he could feel the strength surging. Looking at his system attribute board, Yi King said that he remembered that after raising intelligence to a certain value, he could see more hidden information about the target, so at that time, he would allocate his 5 attribute points to intelligence. Currently, Yi King's attributes were all at 40 points as they were doubled, except for intelligence, which was at 50 points while doubled. While Yi King was still looking at his system screen, 2 more corpses were coming towards him, and they were also making those strange sounds. When Yi King heard them, he asked if he missed a monster again, and he turned to look at where the sound was coming from. Yi King was surprised by what he saw. A horde of corpses was coming his way, and he mentioned that it was a lot. Yi King suddenly remembered how the people all called him a burden to society, trash, and a useless person. Meanwhile, the corpses were charging at him at an incredible speed. As the menacing corpses gathered around him, Yi King considered that, at that moment, he could proudly tell those people that he was Yi King, a scavenger. Yi King activated his ability, and as the multiple hands appeared behind him, he called the corpses trash and urged them to bring it on. The job changers were fighting with the corpses, and they cursed, stating that the falcon hunting group had been parasitized. The leader managed to block one of the corpses' attacks by blocking it with its shield. But the attack was so strong that he got knocked back and skidded on the floor. The leader cursed and mentioned that even though it was a corpse, its strength was actually stronger than when it was alive. He also added that there was still the man-eating plant boss, which was towering behind the corpses, so he ordered everyone to retreat. Screams could be heard as the job changers ran for their lives while the corpses chased after them. The woman in their team tried to call for the leader, but she was stabbed in the back by one of the corpses, and she coughed up blood. On the other hand, the man with the glasses has also fallen victim to the man-eating plant boss, who was sucking his essence out of him. The leader and Lao Chen were running, and while the leader behind him cursed, mentioning that the corpses kept coming at them, Lao Chen was cursing in his mind and thinking that the boss was so strong. While Lao Chen ran up the stairs, the leader covered his back and fended off the corpses behind him. Lao Chen looked desperate as he remarked that he came there for money and equipment, so it would be a damn waste to die there. The leader was suddenly startled when he felt that a slow magic was being applied to him. He immediately knew that it was Lao Chen, and he inquired what the hell he was doing, reminding him that they were on the same team. Lao Chen apologized to the leader, mentioning that he had to try and slow the corpses down so he could escape. The leader was falling down the escalator as the corpses charged at him while Lao Chen ran away, and he vowed that he would burn a few incense sticks for him when he got back. Lao Chen ran away without looking back, and the leader extended his hand that was trembling and covered in blood, and he cursed Lao Chen, calling him a bastard. Unaware of the silhouette standing in front of him as he was looking behind him, Lao Chen remarked that he wouldn't lose much if he ran at that moment because at least he still had the equipment he picked up, and he could just make up an excuse for the team being wiped out once he escaped. A huge, crashing sound suddenly filled the place. Lao Chen was sitting on the ground, and Yi King, who was looking ominous, was towering over him. Lao Chen covered his mouth in surprise, but he realized that it was Yi King, so he cursed at him and called him trash. Yi King pointed out to Lao Chen that he actually betrayed his teammates to save his own skin. Lao Chen was startled when he noticed the dark aura behind Yi King that was devouring corpses. He inquired Yi King if he did all that. Suddenly, Lao Chen heard a scream, and he remarked that he couldn't leave Yi King there alive because if he informed the supervisory committee, it wouldn't end well for him. He inquired Yi King if he wanted to become stronger and stand out, and as he mentioned that it was time that he should go ahead and become food for the monsters, he kicked Yi King. A system screen suddenly showed up, and it gave a notification that the strength check was triggered and there was a critical failure because the kick has no effect on the target and backfires. Lao Chen quickly fell to the ground in pain while holding his leg and cursing, and as he labeled Yi King stinky trash, he inquired what the hell was going on. But instead of answering his question, Yi King called Lao Chen a bastard and stated that he was not even worth being called trash. Yi King used the Abyssal Scavenger's ability, and the multiple hands appeared behind him. He used his ability on Lao Chen, and the hands dragged him into the darkness while Lao Chen was inquiring what the hell it was and calling his mom for help. As the hands held Lao Chen in place, the system notified Yi King that the garbage recycling was in progress. To Yi King's surprise, the system notified him that Lao Chen was a non-recyclable trash. Lao Chen was put back down on the ground, and Yi King looked at him with disdain, stating that not all trash could be recycled. The system notified Yi King that the recycling ability was upgraded so he could recycle useless abilities with the target's consent, and it gave him the Sorcerer 3-minute experience card. Yi King concluded that if the target faints, it is considered consent, and he stated that it was convenient. He immediately used the Sorcerer experience card and acquired the ability Flame Field Control. The system also notified Yi King that the skill Fireball requires 15 intelligence points, but his intelligence is 50, so it triggered the overcasting effect and evolved Fireball into Inferno Blast. Meanwhile, the corpses that were attacking the leader were done with him, and they have directed their attention elsewhere. Yi King was surprised when he saw the silhouettes of the corpses that were coming towards him. He inquired how one would cast a fireball, and he tried to remember how Lao Chen did it and started to replicate it. Yi King extended his arms forward and created an explosion in front of him. The explosion was so strong that it could be seen from the floor below them. Yi King stood there as he saw that there was nothing in front of him. Everything was wiped out. He was so horrified as he mentioned that he hadn't had a chance to recycle them yet, so he shouldn't obliterate them all, and he was unaware of the figure that had just landed on the escalator behind him. The corpse jumped off the escalator and was lunging towards Yi King to attack him from behind. But Yi King noticed the corpse's movement. In that short amount of time, Yi King was able to dodge the corpse's attack by taking a side step. Yi King skidded on the ground as he faced the corpse. He looked at the corpse intently, and as the corpse charged to attack him again, he managed to dodge it again. Yi King summoned his ordinary dagger. He went ahead and used it to block another one of the corpse's attacks. But as they fought, Yi King suddenly realized that he hadn't learned any melee combat skills yet, and he noticed something behind him. It was the corpse of the leader, and Yi King mentioned that it was what he needed, so he used the recycling ability on him and stated that he wouldn't want to be resurrected by the man-eating plant after he died, so he should become his help instead. Yi King acquired the skill Golden Shield. As the corpse charged towards him, Yi King quickly used the skill Golden Shield and summoned a shield in his other hand. Yi King swung his hand, the one that was holding the shield, with all his might, and he was gathering energy. He charged forward as strongly as he could and cut off the corpse's head with the shield's impact. Yi King stood over the head of the decapitated corpse. He apologized to the corpse, as he already had to recycle his body, and he mentioned to rest in peace. Yi King acquired the dagger proficiency card, which enables him to use daggers like a thief and launch a storm-like stabbing attack, and Yi King immediately used it. The system notified Yi King that he had used the dagger proficiency card, and he mentioned that the ordinary dagger in his hand felt more agile. Yi King charged forward to fight the horde of corpses while someone was confirming with the person if their mission was to find the falcon hunting group members and bring them out, which the person affirmed. Yi King looked so determined, and loud banging sounds were produced as he clashed with the corpses. Some of the corpses' skulls were severed while the interviewer questioned the person if he knew that if he didn't find their bodies, the mission would be deemed a failure, and he would not be rewarded. Another corpse was struck and lost an arm, and the system alerted Yi King that the recycling was successful, so he had gained the skill Berserk, which greatly increased strength and agility and gave him short-term control over the plague. As the corpse continued to be struck and dissipate, the person being interviewed acknowledged that they knew the mission would be considered a failure, while Yi King effortlessly eliminated all the corpses he passed by and recycled them at the same time. The interviewer inquired if he found the bodies of the falcon hunting group members, and the person confirmed that he had found them, but they were recycled. While the interviewer was confused about what the person meant when he stated that they were recycled, Yi King faced the high-level abyssal man-eating plant, and he threw his damaged dagger at it. As the person being interviewed explained to the interviewer that recycling meant that they were dragged into the abyss by that person, Yi King utilized his recycling ability on the man-eating plant. It was already morning, and at the Abyss Supervisory Committee interrogation room, Lao Chen was trembling while being interrogated, and the interrogators in front of him revealed that he was the only one who survived in that instance, and the person he mentioned as that person does not exist. But what was even more strange was that when they found him, his level had dropped to level 1, which was an unprecedented anomaly. Lao Chen strongly reminded the interrogators that he had mentioned that his abilities were also recycled by that person, and that it was evidence that that person is a scavenger. But Lao Chen added that it was just probably, and it made the interrogators view him skeptically. The interrogators revealed that he has been highly contaminated by abyssal energy due to being recycled and spit out again, which they were doubting, causing him to hallucinate, and the suspicion of him being a team killer is established. But Lao Chen strongly disagreed, and he insisted that he really didn't lie to them, that the scavenger guy is real. Meanwhile, at a B-level abyss entrance, a lot of job changers were gathered. After what he went through on the previous abyssal gate, Yi King sold the magic crystals on the black market but only got about 30% of the money because the crystal business has always been monopolized by big companies and private trading is illegal, so the black market charges more than 70% in fees. But just the magic crystals he brought out were enough to pay off the high-interest loans that he took a few years back. But there was no more surplus, so he was among those job changers that gathered. But he mentioned that if he used his recycling ability in front of so many people, he was afraid that he would be reported to the supervisory committee. Yi King mentioned that, after all, he was a person who had awakened a strange hidden job, so it would not be impossible for them to lock him up and study him for research. He clenched his fist and declared that he must make more money while he was free. Suddenly, the job changer that was standing in front informed them that it was a newly generated abyss, so everything about it is unknown, and he was sure that they already knew the risks involved. so the reward was doubled at that time, and he emphasized that those who have changed jobs could sign up with him and emphasized that only those with B-level qualifications or above were required. King inquired of the guy if he had stated that someone like him could tag along, so the guy queried him what his job was. Without hesitation, King announced that he was a level 1 scavenger. The people laughed while the guy grasped King's hand, questioning if any trash already dares to claim themselves as job changers, and he advised him that he better go join the line with the rest of the garbage pickers. King revealed that by showing weakness and lowering people's guards, he would likely be thrown to the back of the team for support work. And that way, even if he secretly recycled bodies and garbage while everyone was not paying attention, he wouldn't get caught. And that was his simple plan. Suddenly, someone approached them and demanded the guy to let go. The people immediately recognized the person as Liu Xingren, the daughter of the Liu family who awakened a divine profession, the rising star of the hunting guild, and the so-called chosen one, and she urged to take King with them so they would just have enough people. The guy protested, stating that King was only level 1 and a newbie, but Liu Xingren asserted that it wouldn't even matter if all of them were newbies and level 1 because all of them were trash who were just there to make up the numbers. The guy quickly agreed with Liu Xingren with a smile on his face, stating that they were only responsible for protecting her, and that it was her family's business, so her word is law. While King looked uncomfortable as he remarked that it was close, and that he almost believed he was going to be kicked out again. But it was not the first time he had been treated like trash anyway. King was puzzled when he noticed that Liu Xingren glanced at him. He recalled that he seemed to have seen Liu Xingren somewhere, and he remembered something. King recalled that it was back then, about 2 years ago, when he saw Liu Xingren, who looked astonished while holding a broken sword and was surrounded by crunching sounds. Liu Xingren looked so shocked that she was frozen in place as she saw someone in front of her fight with a wooden weapon in their hand. It was King, and he pierced a monster through its mouth with a wooden pole, which dealt a critical hit and 1 point of damage. The monster collapsed on the ground with a loud bang. King was trembling while Liu Xingren questioned him if he was from the scavenger team and why he could kill monsters. But instead of answering her question, King began rejoicing for his success because, for the first time, he had successfully received a bit of experience. King turned to ask Liu Xingren if she was okay, but instead of answering, she mentioned that she had only heard rumors about it, but she never expected someone to actually try that leveling method. Liu Xingren queried King if he would really gain experience that way, and why he was doing it. She was stupefied when King stated that it was obviously to make money. While King was happily picking up the magic crystals, claiming that they were all his, Liu Xingren expressed disbelief, stating that she didn't believe it because that way of getting experience could cost him his life every time. But King insisted that she knows nothing because they, the job changers, are so high and mighty that they don't understand the hardships of them, the scavengers. He also pointed out that she, on the other hand, left the team behind to go on venturing alone, and he questioned her if she didn't care about her life as she was facing so many monsters single-handedly, and he questioned her what she was trying to prove. Liu Xingren proudly stated that it was of course to become stronger because she wanted to be the first to pass through that place. While King was surprised when he heard Liu Xingren mention that place, Liu Xingren encouraged him to tell her what his true goal was for wanting to change jobs. King revealed that he wanted to become stronger so that he could protect his family. Liu Xingren seemed pleased, and she asked King to tell her his name. King gave her his name. Liu Xingren also gave King her name while telling him that she looks forward to the day he successfully changes jobs, and she invited him to join her team when he changes jobs so that one day they could conquer that place together. King was stunned when he saw Liu Xingren extend her hand to him, as he didn't expect it. He decided to shake her hand as he agreed with her, and he warned that she shouldn't hold him back when the time comes. But Liu Xingren retorted that they should talk about it after he lives long enough to successfully change jobs because earlier she killed 30 monsters alone while he only took one out. But she took it back and said that it was 0.5. Suddenly, 2 bodyguards who were expressing their frustration as they said that they had a hard time looking for her appeared, and as they were surprised that she actually sneaked into the depths of the abyss, they took the time to call King out and tell him to stay away from Liu Xingren. King was appalled as he watched the 2 bodyguards drag Liu Xingren away, and they were saying that the leader was furious, so they almost got their legs broken while not paying attention to Liu Xingren, who asked them to wait. Liu Xingren just decided to toss the crystal, and she told him to catch it. King looked so puzzled as he looked at the crystal he had clenched in his hand. Liu Xingren told him to consider it his 0.5 reward. King walked away without saying anything. but he raised his fist as a sign that he recognized Liu Xingren's words, and he asked himself what her name was again and remembered it as Liu Xingren. The guy slapped Yi King's back, told him that it was definitely Liu Xingren, and asked him what he was looking at, instructing him to hurry and move the crystals, to which Yi King responded that he was on it. Yi King mentioned that he would try his best not to drag the others down while Liu Xingren was observing him, but she remained silent. Liu Xingren remarked that it was very good and instructed him to get his gear and get ready to go. As they stood in front of the abyssal gate, the guy informed everyone that they were going, which the others enthusiastically confirmed. Yi King was with them, and he recalled that at that time, he must work hard to make money and return alive. He recalled that when he fought his way out of the abyss last time, he mastered the shield warrior with the gold shield skill, and the assassin with the dagger mastery card, which let him wield a dagger like an assassin and unleash a barrage of stabbing attacks. Yi King also gained berserker abilities. And finally, as he defeated the boss, he also acquired a boss level ability. It was the man-eating plant super regeneration. Because of Yi King's radar chart point adding method, no matter which career form he takes on, there won't be any shortcomings, and the attribute points were also divided equally among the 6, so the total points could pile up to over 100 points. As they entered the abyssal gate, Yi King mentioned that he was the one who wiped clean all the recyclable things in the previous abyss. However, he was still wondering what level would be equivalent to 100 points. Yi King used his skill, Observing Eye, attribute perception. Looking at the warrior in front of him, Yi King saw that his strength attribute was only 12 points, but he clicked his tongue in his mind when he saw that his weakest point was intelligence with only 1 point, and he mused that if a regular mortal's strength attribute is 1 point, a warrior with 12 points has approximately 12 times the strength of a mortal, and since his attribute value is 100 points, his strength is around 100 times that of a mortal. As they continued to walk forward, Yi King seemed to have stepped on something, and it made a thud. A wall suddenly appeared in front of him, and he crashed into it with a loud bang. The other job changers quickly looked back, and the guy inquired what happened and if there was an earthquake. Yi King was nervously pressing the wall back in, and he explained that the underground structure was a bit unstable. Suddenly, someone announced that they had found a chest, which immediately caught everyone's attention, and Yi King exhaled a sigh of relief. As they gathered in front of the chest, the guy pointed out that it was troublesome because it seems that they don't have any assassins on their team, and the chest was at least a rank. Everyone was startled when Yi King suddenly volunteered to try. They all looked so curious as they watched Yi King tinker with the chest. As he managed to open the chest, Yi King joked that picking that lock was as easy as eating, while the others were astonished when they saw that the chest was opened and a lot of cards came out of it. The guy looked so skeptical as he confronted Yi King, questioning that the ability to pick locks is a skill that only an assassin higher than level 5 should be able to learn. And Yi King clarified that a level 1 scavenger could learn a lot of convenient abilities because they come across unopened chests quite often while picking up trash. The guy gathered the cards, and he stated that they would distribute the loot after the mission ended, so they should continue forward. But Yi King looked concerned as the others followed the guy's directive and proceeded to move forward. While holding a pebble in his hand, Yi King requested the girl to stay where she was because there seemed to be something in front of her, which puzzled the girl. Yi King threw the pebble ahead and made it bounce off the walls. Suddenly, the walls began to move closer together and they had spikes on them. Liu Xingren was silently observing from behind while the girl questioned Yi King if he was really just a level 1. And Yi King advised not to overthink it because they just coincidentally came across something he was good at, as he often triggers traps while picking up trash, and he suffers too much because of them, so he naturally awakened the ability of trap perception, so there was nothing weird about it. Liu Xingren looked doubtful when she heard Yi King's explanation, but she kept her peace. Meanwhile, as the 3 job changers accepted Yi King's explanation, the system notified him that his deception was a success, and they had become more persuadable, which made Yi King curse inwardly as he pondered if it was the power of 100 points of intelligence. The guy gave Yi King a normal grade, broken one-handed mace, telling him that it was his reward and requesting that he accept it with gratitude, which made Yi King realize that it seemed like his evaluation in their minds was still not good. As they continued forward, they arrived at a huge empty room, and as one of them questioned what it was, if it was the secret treasure at the end of the level, they boasted that getting there was really too simple, and another one added that that abyss might be a reward room without any monsters. There was a stone tablet in the middle of the room, and it was floating on top of a huge container that looked like it was filled with blood. While Liu Xingren warned them not to celebrate too early and to pay attention to where the monsters might spawn, The warrior grabbed the tablet and asked if the tablet was all there was to that abyss, while the warrior was looking away and informing the others that they had obtained the final treasure so they could leave. He was unaware that the blood from the container was starting to boil. The blood in it suddenly spurted upward, which surprised everyone, and the system notified them that the blood trial was starting. As the blood was squirming at the ceiling, the others called the warrior an idiot and stated that it was not a reward room at all, it was a trap. The blood suddenly transformed into multiple undead creatures, and the job changers immediately recognized that it was the blood nightmare. Liu Xingren quickly took out her weapon, and she urged everyone to prepare for battle. The group was immediately surrounded by the blood nightmares while those creatures were producing loud, clacking sounds. Wearing the Ring of Weakness, which was a trash item, Yi King admitted that in order to prevent his attributes from being exposed, he should fight with 25% of his strength at that time. The item's effect was that it reduced all attributes of the wearer to the percentage of choice, and as he remembered how he complained, questioning what the use of a ring that could only reduce attributes was, Yi King acknowledged that sure enough, no matter how useless something might seem, it will come in handy one day. Everyone was preparing to fight with the blood nightmares as they began charging at them. Yi King used his skill, Spirit Dash, and while the others were still busy fighting with the blood nightmares on their side, Yi King had already managed to eliminate the ones on his side in one swift motion. Liu Xingren noticed it, and she was surprised that Yi King did it in just one strike. The blood nightmares that were surrounding Yi King started to burst. Liu Xingren commented that it was interesting, and she was so engrossed with watching Yi King that she didn't notice the blood nightmare that was charging her way. But she quickly shifted her attention to the blood nightmare and managed to eliminate it effortlessly with one swing of her sword. Meanwhile, the warrior wondered what the hell those blood nightmares were because, with just one cut, they burst into pieces. He was alarmed when he noticed that the blood nightmares were condensing. The blood nightmare is very fragile in its original state, but when attacking humans, it will strengthen itself according to its opponent and imitate their form. And as the blood nightmare imitated the warrior's form, the warrior yelled that it has taken on the form of humans. The warrior quickly charged in, swung his sword, and beheaded the blood nightmare. He smiled proudly as the girl praised him for the job well done. But the blood nightmare didn't stop moving, and it swung its sword in return. The warrior was so surprised that he was not able to react quickly and dodge the blood nightmare's attack, which resulted in him losing his arm. The blood nightmare grew its head back as it walked towards the warrior, who was screaming in pain on the ground, and as the girl saw that beheading was no use, she wondered if that thing was unkillable. Raising its sword, the blood nightmare loomed ominously over the warrior, who seemed to have lost his consciousness due to the pain. The blood nightmare swung its sword and was about to cut the warrior with it. The warrior helplessly stared at the sword of the blood nightmare, but it stopped right before it hit his face. Liu Xingren mocked if they could be any more useless. She effortlessly crushed the frozen blood nightmare with her bare hand. Liu Xingren remarked that it was just a blood nightmare and they were embarrassing themselves as expected. She sneered that a piece of trash is just trash after all. Another horde of blood nightmare charged towards the job changers. The mage exclaimed that it was too fast and there wasn't even any time to cast magic spells. Yi King reasoned that since a sword is ineffective against the blood nightmares, it would be better to make it evaporate on the spot. He used his skill, Great Flame Explosion. The mage recognized the Great Flame Explosion, and she exclaimed that it was an S-grade evocation spell and Yi King was able to cast it instantly. She speculated if it could be a bug and how a level 1 player could do such a thing. Two more blood nightmares appeared in front of Yi King. They screeched as they charged towards Yi King. On the other hand, Yi King let out a scream. The blood nightmares went into shock due to Yi King's powerful scream. Yi King activated his Berserk mode, which increases his speed, strength, and damage received by 100%. He punched and destroyed the blood nightmares, but Yi King was surprised when the blood that splattered in the room was going back to where it came from. The blood nightmare was recovering and condensing its blood that splattered all over the place. It created loud clacking sounds as it continued to condense and grow. The mage wondered what was up with that monster Yi King was facing. Meanwhile, Yi King explained that it has been replicated. The job changers recognized that the blood nightmare turned into a king-level blood nightmare, and as they speculated how a king-level monster appeared in a B-rank abyss, they concluded that something was definitely wrong. Yi King explained that the blood nightmare is able to imitate the target's form and it grows stronger when encountering a strong enemy, and that blood nightmare absorbed his attributes and immediately evolved into a king-level monster. He braced himself as the blood nightmare extended its arms to attack him. Yi King quickly dodged the blood nightmare's attack, and it hit the floor. He wondered if the blood nightmare's attributes are on par with his and contemplated that there is no way to fight it by overpowering its attributes if that was the case. Suddenly, Liu Xingren declared that Yi King should step aside because he is a good-for-nothing fish. She asserted that she should be the one to take care of such a powerful opponent. Liu Xingren quickly prepared to attack while the Blood Nightmare's hand was still stuck on the floor. She used the Blood Nightmare's arm as a path and ran towards its body. Liu Xingren jumped and lunged towards the Blood Nightmare with her sword. She was aiming for the Blood Nightmare's body, but it managed to block her attack with its arms. The Blood Nightmare's arm started to freeze as soon as Liu Xingren's sword hit it. King remarked that it was the control over the Frost domain. The Blood Nightmare managed to pull its stuck arm from the floor. It used its free arm to grab Liu Xingren. Liu Xingren was able to notice the Blood Nightmare's attack that was coming towards her. She managed to dodge the Blood Nightmare's attack. Liu Xingren skidded on the floor as she landed back on it. She realized that it wouldn't do and that she was still too weak. Liu Xingren recalled how one of her bodyguards informed that they had detected that the energy level of that abyss was very unstable. They doubted if she was really going to enter on her own. Liu Xingren reflected that her goal was to finally conquer that place, the dark uppermost level of the tower at the end, and her current growth rate is still far behind that of her older brothers and sisters. But she corrected herself and admitted that, to be precise, she can't even reach them. Back in the present, Liu Xingren was preparing for another attack while the Blood Nightmare's sharp claws charged towards her. Liu Xingren decided that if she couldn't even crush that abyss with ease, she wouldn't be worthy to inherit the Liu family name. She powerfully swung her sword and blocked the Blood Nightmare's claws with it. King and the other job changers were watching from the sidelines, and they were all astounded. Liu Xingren raised her hand and summoned a flag behind her. She used her skill, Flag of Frost, and the system notified that the speed of all allies within a radius of 30 meters will increase by 50%. The floor started to freeze as soon as the flag was plunged in it. The ice quickly spread, and it froze the Blood Nightmare in front of Liu Xingren. As Liu Xingren prepared for another attack, the system notified that her speed had increased. She considered that the Frost domain specializes in restraining liquid-type monsters, so even if the Blood Nightmare can't be killed, it will cease to be a threat if it's completely frozen. Liu Xingren used her skill, Comet Strike, and slashed the Blood Nightmare in half. King acknowledged that it was the legendary S-rank God-chosen job and that he was actually looking forward to knowing who is stronger between the King-level Blood Nightmare and the God-chosen knight Liu Xingren. Liu Xingren was surprised that her attack completely had no effect. The Blood Nightmare condensed back in its original form as the blood seeped through the cracks of Liu Xingren's ice. It quickly moved and bombarded Liu Xingren with attacks. Liu Xingren realized that even though she is an S-rank, her strength still can't compare to that of her older brothers and sisters. She reflected that even though she also has the surname Liu, she always feels like she is being left behind as she is the weakest member of the Liu family, and she is always the person who is laughed at and ridiculed. Liu Xingren recalled how her sister remarked that she was simply a disgrace to the Liu family. One of her brothers wondered how he could have a sister so weak and lamented that no one wanted to live like trash. Her other brother advised that his little sister should just stay home because the abyss is very dangerous. Liu Xingren resolved that she wanted to become stronger, even if she had to start from a novice abyss. She determined that as long as she continues challenging greater difficulties, she will be able to surpass her older siblings someday, and she insisted that she must be able to face every challenge on her own. Liu Xingren hit the Blood Nightmare with her sword, but it just gave the Blood Nightmare a nick on its head, and it broke in half. King was taken aback when he saw what happened. Meanwhile, Liu Xingren was completely horrified with what happened, and she was not able to notice the attack coming at her from the side. A loud booming sound echoed through the room as the Blood Nightmare slammed Liu Xingren on the ground. Liu Xingren coughed up blood and was helpless in the Blood Nightmare's grip. The mage exclaimed that the Blood Nightmare even defeated Liu Xingren. She warned that an S-rank hunter has been defeated, so they should run. The Blood Nightmare swung its other arm to deal the finishing blow on Liu Xingren. King gritted his teeth and quickly charged forward. He used his skill, Great Flame Explosion, to cut off the Blood Nightmare's arm that was restraining Liu Xingren. The other job changers were alarmed when they saw that the arm that got cut off was flying towards them. They quickly ran away, and the arm crashed on the floor with Liu Xingren on it. Liu Xingren quickly moved and sat back up. She couldn't hide her surprise while she muttered that King was a brat. King was fearlessly charging towards the Blood Nightmare. He used his skill, Observing Eye, Weakness Perception, and realized that if the monster reaches King level, it will gain resistance to abnormal conditions. King understood that if the level is high enough, monsters may even become completely immune to freezing, dizziness, paralysis, slowness, and even some places that were originally weak points will no longer be its weaknesses as its level increases. He concluded that there is no point in holding back anymore, so he should activate all attributes. King used his skill, Great Flame Explosion, again to attack the Blood Nightmare. But to his surprise, the Blood Nightmare quickly recovered. King ran with all his might as the Blood Nightmare attacked him from behind. The mage marveled that King was so fast while Liu Xingren was busy recovering her health points. King twirled in the air as he maneuvered his body to dodge another attack of the Blood Nightmare. When he landed back on the ground, he quickly took a step back to regain his balance and keep his distance from the Blood Nightmare. King believed that as long as he could find the weakness of the King-level Blood Nightmare, he would achieve his goal. He used his skill, Great Flame Explosion, again to attack the Blood Nightmare. King noticed that no matter which part he destroyed, it would regenerate, and he had also not observed any weaknesses throughout its whole body. He suspected that the monster seemed to be remotely controlled by something. He quickly realized something when he considered the monster being remotely controlled. Yi King called out to the other job changers and pointed out that when the cube was removed, a blood trial appeared, indicating that the cube had something to do with the blood nightmare. He urged that they should kick it over to him. The warrior acknowledged that he got it and quickly kicked the tablet over to Yi King. While the tablet was still in the air, the system notified that he passed the intelligence check, so he could already decipher ancient writing on glyph blocks, and he should decode the ancient incantation on the glyph block to lift the blood curse. Yi King realized that the solution was right in front of their eyes, and if he wished, he had known to use the observing eye from the start. But the blood nightmare suddenly grabbed the glyph block before it could reach Yi King. The blood nightmare quickly ate the glyph block. It froze and went to invincible mode. One of the job changers wondered why it wasn't moving, and as another remarked that it was so scary, Yi King cursed and admitted that he was too careless. Yi King informed that the blood nightmare entered invincible mode and cursed. Suddenly, Liu Xingren wondered if she had seen him somewhere before and mentioned that she believed he looked familiar when she entered earlier. Yi King wondered if Liu Xingren never actually recognized him and clarified that he met her in the abyss 2 years ago. He reminded her that he was the scavenger who took away her experience points, and that was the first experience point that he earned in his life. Liu Xingren recalled that she got 29.5 points from that monster, and Yi King was the brat who picked up the 0.5 points she missed. She remembered, and as she pondered what Yi King's name was again, she suggested that it was Yi Yeking. But Yi King corrected her. Liu Xingren confessed that she never imagined that Yi King would succeed in job changing. Yi King confirmed that it was right, and he is currently a level 1 scavenger. Liu Xingren reflected that Yi King was always risking his life for experience and accumulating points bit by bit. She recognized that Yi King had already become that strong, and she compared herself to him. Liu Xingren scoffed and admitted that saying it out loud is too shameful. She explained that the block will circulate within the blood nightmare's body and her control over the first domain could briefly freeze it for a while, so Yi King should use that brief period of time to locate the block. Yi King observed that as expected, no matter who it is, there will always be a time when a single person can't handle a challenge on their own. He proposed that Liu Xingren should count it as her 0.5 reward and suggested that they should work together to defeat the monster. Liu Xingren was taken aback by Yi King's gesture. She scoffed and warned that Yi King better not hold her back. Suddenly, the mage requested that they should wait because they also wanted to join the battle, to which the warrior concurred that the mage was right and that even though they might not be of much help, he wanted to fight with all he had. Yi King agreed and concluded that they should do it together because they will definitely get out alive. The blood nightmare was still frozen in place with the block glowing in its stomach. The liquid surrounding the block was gurgling. Yi King remarked that there are still 5 seconds until the blood nightmare's invincible mode is lifted and the monster is entering a berserker stage, which will rampage for the next 30 seconds. He emphasized that everyone should listen up because it was the final 30-second opportunity they would have, and they must return alive at that time. Everyone started trembling when Yi King mentioned returning alive. Suddenly, they were invigorated, and as they yelled and declared that they must come back alive, the system notified that his intelligence check was triggered and the spirit boost succeeded. Liu Xingren was also affected by the spirit boost, and her fatigue value decreased by 100% while his magic value recovery speed increased by 15% for 30 seconds. She quickly looked around to see where the boost was coming from, unaware that it was Yi King. Liu Xingren muttered that it turned out that she can't underestimate even a trash character. She called the warrior and instructed that he should keep the monster's hatred down. The warrior shouted that the blood nightmare was a bastard and that it should look at him. The blood nightmare let out a terrifying howl, and multiple tentacles grew out of its body. Liu Xingren addressed the mage and directed that she should target the monster's newly generated tentacles and cover the scavenger, and the mage confirmed that she was on it. The mage quickly gathered her aura onto her staff. She fired her aura towards the blood nightmare. The blood nightmare took a direct hit from the mage's attacks. Meanwhile, Yi King explained that the glyph block is the key to ending the blood trial, and if it's destroyed by the fireball, the trial will never end. Liu Xingren wondered what they should do. Yi King considered that he could take it out by hand. Surprised, Liu Xingren exclaimed that there was no way Yi King could remove the glyph block by hand. She speculated if he was planning to dive into the stomach of the blood nightmare. Yi King clarified that more specifically, he is going to penetrate the monster's body. Liu Xingren quickly caught on to what Yi King was trying to do. She immediately summoned the archer and instructed that he should target the roof and shoot down the rocks to create steps Yi King could jump on. The archer immediately confirmed that he understood. He quickly fired his arrow towards the roof. Rocks started falling down the blood nightmare. Liu Xingren announced that she will freeze the lower half of the blood nightmare. Yi King assured that Liu Xingren should leave the rest to him. He charged forward with Liu Xingren right behind him. Seeing Yi King, the blood nightmare quickly directed his tentacles towards him. Yi King moved quickly to dodge each of the blood nightmare's tentacles. He managed to pass through the tentacles and continued to move forward. Yi King realized that his super regeneration abilities could instantly heal minor wounds. Therefore, he could ignore small attacks from the blood nightmare. On the other hand, Liu Xingren used her skill, Flag of Frost. The lower half of the Blood Nightmare was immediately frozen, and Yi King used the chance to lunge at the Blood Nightmare. Yi King declared that he will target the chest area because it is easier to penetrate. But he acknowledged that he was not fast enough. Yi King activated his Berserker mode and increased his speed by 20%. He gulped a potion, and the system notified that his toxic evolution was triggered, so the potion effect was reversed and his speed increased by 15%. Yi King realized that the trash potion cards he picked up at the entrance of the abyss could finally be put to use, and the system notified that he was granted a bonus effect of skin hardening which increases his defense by 15%. He proclaimed that it was his finishing blow. Yi King lunged at the Blood Nightmare at an incredible speed. But suddenly, one of the Blood Nightmare's tentacles slithered towards Yi King. Yi King cursed when he saw that. He cursed again as he blocked the tentacle with his arm. Liu Xingren and the others were alarmed when they saw what happened. The Blood Nightmare has successfully deflected Yi King. Yi King lamented that his showing off failed. He admitted that as expected, a piece of trash should keep a low profile. But Yi King smiled and countered he doesn't believe what he just stated. Yi King activated his recycling abilities. He indicated that the recyclable target is himself. Yi King looked so calm as he kept falling. Suddenly, huge hands appeared on the floor. The Blood Nightmare was puzzled when he noticed those terrifying hands. Liu Xingren wondered what it was, and the other job changers speculated where it came from. The system notified that it is unable to recycle living organisms, so the recycling failed. Yi King commanded that if he can't be recycled, he would request for it to throw him out vigorously. He urged that it should do it with all its strength. The huge hand threw Yi King towards the Blood Nightmare vigorously just like he requested. A loud booming sound filled the room as Yi King pierced through the Blood Nightmare's body and grabbed the glyph block. Yi King declared that he got it. The Blood Nightmare collapsed on the floor at the same time Yi King landed on the floor. Yi King started chanting the incarnation on the glyph block, and the system notified that the blood trial was completed. The Blood Nightmare slowly dissipated into thin air. The job changers cursed and demanded what just happened. Liu Xingren wondered if they won. The job changers suddenly cheered and exclaimed that they won when the system notified that they had leveled up. Everyone's attributes increased when they leveled up. It also happened to Liu Xingren, and she remarked that she just leveled up. On the other hand, the system notified that he had failed to level up because he was already at the max level, and Yi King scoffed as he noted that it was as expected. A huge treasure chest suddenly appeared in the room, and one of the job changers remarked that it was the real treasure. Multiple cards quickly flew out of the treasure chest. Yi King caught one of the cards, and it was a sword that requires level 10 to wield. He complained that his maximum level is only 1 when the system notified that his level does not meet the requirements. Yi King wondered if all that flashy equipment before his eyes was all useless to him, and he cursed in his mind as he lamented that he wanted it so badly and that he was so sad that he wanted to cry. Liu Xingren remarked that as the one who passed the blood trial, Yi King is the greatest contributor, so he should be the one to distribute those items, and Yi King responded that it was nothing. Yi King mentioned that there was something he needed to trouble Liu Xingren with. A few moments later, multiple bodyguards have gathered in front of the gate of the abyss. One of them proposed that they should contact the headquarters and prepare to send a rescue team. Liu Xingren suddenly emerged from the gate and announced that there was no need. She gracefully came out of the gate, and the rest of the job changers followed. The bodyguard was in tears as he called Liu Xingren. A reporter remarked that as expected of Liu Xingren, she has successfully cleared an abyss on her own while the bodyguard thanked the heavens. Liu Xingren affirmed that it was right and wondered what there could possibly be that she can't do alone. She emphasized that she is an S rank after all. Liu Xingren recalled that earlier, she inquired what he would trouble her with, and Yi King queried if her Liu group shouldn't be short on money. Yi King proposed if he could sell those items to her with a discount, so he would charge her 500 magic crystals, which took Liu Xingren by surprise, but she replied that it was no problem. Yi King added that there was one more thing, and he requested that Liu Xingren treat him as if he was not there when she leaves and that the abyss was cleared by her alone. Liu Xingren was confused, but she still agreed okay. Yi King urged that they should go on ahead as he will slip out secretly later. Liu Xingren speculated if Yi King was planning to make her owe him a favor. On the other hand, Yi King was still inside the dark abyss. He was sitting on the floor with the glyph block in front of him. Yi King extended his hand and reached out to the glyph block. A small remnant of the blood nightmare suddenly emerged from the glyph block. Yi King smiled when he saw it. He wondered if even something as weak as that wouldn't want to be like trash and let others step on it, and he urged that it should become his strength. Yi King activated his recycling ability to recycle the blood nightmare. The system notified that he had successfully recycled the blood nightmare. It notified that he had gained the ability nightmare body. Yi King rejoiced that it was great. He expressed that he will look forward to working with the blood nightmare in the battles from that point onward. A few moments later, Yi King was back in the city. He was sitting alone in a cafe and was checking his system panel. Yi King was looking at the items he had in his inventory. He reflected that he gave all the items with higher level requirements to Liu Xingren, But now that he considers about it, an unknown scavenger with lots of flashy equipment in hand would definitely be noticed by a certain group of supervisors. Yi King concluded that, on the contrary, those pieces of trash are so inconspicuous that the supervisors wouldn't bother caring even if he sold them secretly. He realized that he was overthinking because no one would buy those trash items. Suddenly, Yi King accidentally tapped the recycle button with his finger while he held his drink. The system notified that an equipment was recycled and he earned 1 BP, basic point. Yi King exclaimed if he accidentally decomposed the item. The system gave him a tutorial and explained that basic point is a universal substance extracted after decomposing useless equipment that could be used to upgrade, repair, and create new items. And as Yi King queried if those trash pieces of equipment could be decomposed, the system gave him a task and instructed for him to complete the repair of the ordinary dagger. As the system notified that repairing the ordinary dagger costs 5 BP, he queried if he needed to complete the task by following the hints and remarked that the remaining durability is 0 divided by 33, so he almost threw the dagger away after killing the boss. Yi King calculated that if he counted the basic point from the accidental decomposition, he still needed 4 BP, so he just needed to decompose 4 more weapons. After repairing the ordinary dagger, Yi King noted that not only has the weapon been repaired, but the durability and attack have also been slightly enhanced. So, in other words, as long as they are constantly worn out and repaired, even trash weapons could be enhanced. Yi King observed that it seems that trash equipment needed to be tempered to enhance, while the system congratulated him on completing the tutorial. The system instructed Yi King to select a reward between the novice formula, which is a convenient magical potion, and a random attribute value increase of 2, and Yi King selected the convenient magical potion formula. Yi King reflected that at present, attribute points are not scarce for him, and what he worries about most when venturing into the abyss is that he can't predict its depth because many adventurers who aren't prepared often run out of magic points before finding the boss room and have to retrace their steps to return and resupply. He considered that as a result, magic bottles are often key props for a group's survival, and the value of those bottles speaks for itself. The system congratulated Yi King for learning item regeneration. It explained that the convenient magical potion regeneration requires 6 BP and a random container. Yi King realized that he was not surprised that regenerating an item requires BP, but he was surprised about the random container. He politely called for the barista's attention at the counter and inquired if he could give him a container. A few moments later, Yi King had multiple cups on his table. Yi King remarked that the trash has been completely recycled, so the next step was regeneration, and he was amused that there was also a minigame. While Yi King was busy with the minigame, the barista was puzzled as he looked over at him from behind. Yi King managed to regenerate 5 containers of the convenient magical potion. He sighed and commented that as expected from a recycled item, it looked weird, but it is not like it's unusable. The system notified that he gained convenient magical potion 5 times. Yi King suddenly turned pale as he realized that the potion tasted like some sort of rancid juice. The system notified that his magic value increased while his fatigue value decreased, and Yi King remarked that it was good as he felt like his magic had been restored and his physical fatigue was gone. Walking out of the cafe, Yi King decided that he should be able to clear one more abyss that day. Suddenly, a bald man called him and wondered if he was Yi King. Yi King did not respond, and he simply gave the bald man a look. The bald man scoffed and remarked that only a few days have passed and Yi King's aura has completely changed. He speculated if he could have picked up some treasure while scavenging for trash and mentioned that he had looked for Yi King for a while, and he almost wanted to report him as missing a few days ago. Yi King replied that he has paid off all his debts and even paid the interest in full, so the bald man shouldn't bother him. But the bald man retorted if he believed that was it and added that he may have paid off his debt. But his work contract hasn't expired yet, so he shouldn't forget that a trash picker should live like a trash picker. He remarked that Yi King should look at himself pretending to be cool, and he questioned just who he was trying to impress. The bald man slapped the cup out of Yi King's hand. He demanded how blind he could be. He exclaimed that Yi King spilled his brown sugar pearl extra large cup and wondered if he is aware of the consequences of a level 0 knocking over a B-rank job changer. One of the bald man's men scoffed and remarked that he had always found Yi King unpleasant to look at. Meanwhile, Yi King considered that according to the supervision regulations for job changers, using their abilities is forbidden outside the abyss, and the only ones allowed to activate their abilities outside the abyss are law enforcers and special armed personnel, so he has to find a blind spot of the security camera to activate his recycling and regeneration abilities. The bald man suggested that Yi King pick up the pearls on the ground and eat them one by one and lick the pool of milk tea clean. He mocked that he was assigning Yi King that job of picking up trash because, after all, it was a rare job opportunity, and he laughed maniacally. Controlling his anger, Yi King declared that he would refuse. The bald man remarked that Yi King was shameless. Suddenly, Rodrigo Caesar stepped into the picture. The bald man trembled in fear when he recognized Caesar. Caesar is from the S-rank hunting group, Blood Oath. He queried if he had gathered enough people, and the bald man replied that he was almost there and they were just short of one person. Caesar demanded where the last person was. He called Yi King's attention. Caesar confirmed that Yi King was hired. The bald man objected that King was just a trash picker. King did not respond, and he just looked at Caesar. The bald man insisted that the type of person Caesar wanted must be someone who can fend for themselves, and he could go and find one immediately. But Caesar clarified that when entering the abyss under the Red Moon State, all the monsters will be extremely ferocious, so what he needs is someone who could be used as cannon fodder, and as for strength, it doesn't matter. King was interested when he heard about the Red Moon. He knew that during the Red Moon, the monsters in the abyss would enter a berserk state and rare monsters would also respawn in the abyss. King also knew that the rewards dropped by monsters will be doubled and the quality of the magic crystals dropped will also be purer. He agreed and confirmed that he will join. Caesar affirmed that it was excellent and praised that King was a tactful guy. He called the other team members and instructed that they should all come to him. Suddenly, Lao Chen screamed when he saw King. He was so surprised that he couldn't help but curse when he recognized King. King realized who Lao Chen was and what he was about to say. He quickly grabbed Lao Chen's face and warned that he should shut up. Lao Chen was about to say who King was, but his words got muffled, and King cautioned that he should think before he speaks. Lao Chen was out of breath when King let him go. He wondered if it was really him and if he was not hallucinating. But instead of answering his query, King declared that if he didn't borrow everyone's strength at that time, they all would have died in there, so it was still thanks to him that he was alive. Caesar abruptly questioned if they knew each other, and King denied, of course not. Caesar observed that it made sense because there was no way a person who killed his own teammates had real friends. King queried how he got out. Lao Chen explained that the committee originally planned to sentence him to 15 years, but he sacrificed all his assets and paid a fine of 1.5 million to be freed. So all because of King, he is currently penniless and has lost all his levels. He complained that he could only start from scratch as a cannon fodder, so if King doesn't pay back his levels, he will report him to the World Committee. King threatened that he would dare Lao Chen to say one more thing, and he will actually turn him into leftovers and recycle him. King was at the Sea City subway. He came with Caesar and Chen Xingdian. Zhu Tong, a level 3 bard, welcomed them to the cannon fodder team and remarked that they should tell them what his job is. King replied that he is a level 1 scavenger, while Chen Xingdian mentioned that he is a level 1 mage. Zhu Tong commented that it was normal and they were all trash there, so they didn't have to make fun of each other. After all, they were all there to exchange their lives for money, and there was nothing more noble than that, which made King sigh in his mind. And he concluded that it seemed like the trash group was definitely going to follow along. Zhu Tong suggested that he should allow him to introduce those other 2 cannon fodder teammates, and they needed to pick a leader for their small cannon fodder team. So as a level 3 bard, he thinks he is the most suitable for the role. Lao Zhu, a level 2 healer, agreed that since he has the highest level, they will obey his command, while Lao Zhang, a level 3 warrior king, stated that he doesn't have any opinions. Suddenly, Caesar declared that he would announce something. In addition to the 6 main members of Blood Oath, there will be 5 temporary members joining them at that time. As one of the members cursed and sneered that he shouldn't speak so highly of the cannon fodders, another member scoffed that cannon fodders are just cannon fodder, and unlike the rest of them, job changers, cannon fodders are just used as bait to reduce their casualties. Caesar explained that the abyss is in the shape of a maze, with many traps distributed in each room. The cannon fodders are tasked with finding a passage to the boss room as quickly as possible and bringing that information back to the main team. He doesn't expect any of them to have combat abilities, so if they encounter a monster, they should just run away. If they want a share of the money, at least one of them has to leave alive, and if only one survives, they will earn all the rewards. Lao Zhang checked with Lao Zhu if his health was okay. Lao Zhu insisted that he can't back down as he still has 4 daughters waiting for dinner at home. Lao Zhang sighed. As he revealed that his wife was severely ill and needed money, he questioned why else he would take the risk there. Zhu Tong urged that they should go. Suddenly Lao Zhang observed that King looked like a new face, and Lao Zhu inquired if there aren't new faces in the cannon fodder field. Lao Zhang clarified no, and he meant that the new face looked relaxed, and it was the first time he had seen someone like that. The cannon fodder team entered the abyss. Zhu Tong wondered aloud if they don't find it strange that not a single monster has appeared even after walking that far. And Chen Xingdian cautioned that he shouldn't jinx it. Lao Zhu questioned why it had suddenly gotten colder, and Lao Zhang confirmed that it was true that the temperature had dropped. Zhu Tong regretted that he knew he should have worn more and they should continue forward. Suddenly, the floor he stepped on cracked. He was unaware that a huge axe was about to fall on him, while King startled. He threw a pebble at the axe to divert its direction, and it bounced off and hit Zhu Tong as well. Zhu Tong yelled that it hurt. He wondered what happened, and while Chen Xingdian scolded that he stepped on a trap and he was an idiot, King pondered how he lived up until that point. Zhu Tong reassured that he is really lucky as he was almost taken out by that mechanism. But it was okay, so they should continue forward. Huge cocoons fell from the ceiling. They fell on the floor with a loud thud. Xiaozhou nervously asked if those things were alive. They were horrified when sharp claws ripped through the cocoon. They hatched into a level 5 demonized spider, which is an elite creature that spits poison. Zhu screamed and cried that those disgusting insects scare him the most. Chen Xingdian activated his skill, Burn, but his attack didn't do any damage. Lao Zu informed that those are elite creatures. As Chen Xingdian cursed, Lao Zhang offered that they should allow him. He charged and slashed the spiders. Meanwhile, one of the spiders discreetly approached Yi King. It bit him on the leg, but it was surprised that it dealt 0 damage. He effortlessly kicked it, and its head was sent flying. Chen Xingdian mocked what he was being so arrogant for when he is nothing but an ability stealer. The system notified that a recyclable demonized spider was found and asked him if he would like to recycle it. He confirmed that he would recycle, and it notified that he earned 1 attribute point. He also obtained the Arcana Quenching Poison, which is an additional type of ability that could be used on items and equipment, and after 1 use, it will disappear, but the target item or equipment will gain the effects until it is destroyed. He realized that it seems that he could obtain not only skill cards and job cards from recycling corpses, but Arcana cards as well, and also, that type of card seems to be able to strengthen equipment. Suddenly, Lao Zhang demanded what he was doing, spacing out, and urged that if he didn't want to hold everyone back, he should just retreat quickly. He assured that he was coming and he would try quenching poison on that ordinary dagger. The dagger transformed while Zhu was being chased by a spider. He assumed that he was the highest level bard on the team. The spider swung its sharp leg at him, and he managed to dodge. He admitted that what he was scared of telling them was that his job actually had no combat abilities at all and could only buff others. The situation at that moment was too dangerous, so he could only give himself a life-preserving buff first. While rapping, he boasted that he is an elegant bard, and during battle, every second, he must remind himself to be gentle. And he doesn't care what that day brings, monsters or ghosts, because all on his territory must be captured without mercy. Yi King questioned what he was doing while he kept yapping. The system suddenly notified that the target strengthening was a success. He panicked that he messed up and questioned how he strengthened that monster instead. He looked back and saw that the spider was about to catch up to him. It jumped in the air and lunged at him, but Yi King effortlessly destroyed it with his dagger. Lao Zhang remarked that the monsters have been strengthened. Lao Zu expressed his alarm while he suggested that they should retreat. On the other hand, Chen Xingdian screamed and cursed. Yi King ran towards him aggressively. He was so fast that he wasn't visible when he sliced the spiders. The spider that was about to attack Chen Xingdian was sliced to pieces. He swiftly moved and cut up the rest of the remaining spiders. In an instant, he was back behind the team where he stayed. Lao Zu inquired if Xu Tong was the one who did that, and Lao Zhang confirmed that he should be. On the other hand, Yi King realized that demonized spiders have poison resistance, which weakens the effects of poisons, so it was no wonder that quenching poison is an arcana extracted from the demonized spider itself, and if used on themselves, the effects definitely wouldn't be obvious, but they are overflowing with physical damage. While Lao Zhang remarked that the bard is so strong, Lao Zu commented that it was as expected of their leader. Zhu Tong questioned if he killed it and assumed that he only planned to activate a buff to put oil on the soles of his feet. Meanwhile, Yi King considered that the monsters of the abyss have a certain extent of intelligence, and if they find the target invincible, they won't initiate an attack. They will turn around and run as their first strategy. The spiders were trembling in fear. They retreated, and Yi King confirmed that it was as expected. Chen Xingdian observed that the monsters seemed to be retreating, and Lao Zu mentioned that it was only the first room and it was already terrifying. He won't dare imagine what might appear later, while Yi King revealed that many arcanas have already been recycled and he only kept 1 card as a spare while the remaining 27 have been converted into BP. The system notified that he obtained 54 BP. On the other hand, Zhu Tong declared that since the monsters have retreated, they should continue forward, and Chen Xingdian should light a fire for him, to which he responded okay. He stated that their mission is to venture further inside, so they must be careful from that point onward and not trigger any more traps. Yi King wondered if he wasn't talking about himself. Suddenly, he noticed a portal. The system notified that a hidden berserk area was found. He pondered that due to the influence of the red moon, new branches were appearing in the dungeon, and he considered if he should try exploring that branch. He summoned the blood nightmare. He created a clone of himself using it. He instructed that it should walk with the team for a little while and he will catch up later. As the blood nightmare returned to the group, Zhu Tong questioned him where he went. He warned that he shouldn't fall behind, otherwise they won't know how he died. Meanwhile, Yi King has entered the portal. He was transported into a cave. He walked outside into an empty field, but he was surprised when the broodmother moved and made noise, and he realized that it was hiding above him. He glanced over his shoulder. He quickly jumped away and dodged its attack. He gritted his teeth as he created distance between them. It was gigantic. It attacked him with one of its legs, and he managed to dodge it. He quickly countered and attacked with his dagger, but he was surprised when he saw that he barely created a scratch on its surface. He remarked that its physical defense has made it almost completely immune. The broodmother swung its leg at him again. At that time, he was hit and was sent flying. He crashed against the wall and created a huge dent in it. He used his skill, Observing Eye. He saw that it was a level 20 rare elite. He exclaimed that a rare elite has actually appeared, and if he could kill it, he may be able to obtain rare level recyclables. It suddenly fired spider silk from its mouth. It missed him and hit the ground. He jumped above its head. He used his skill, the Great Flame Explosion. It exploded over the broodmother's head. It was enraged, and it quickly looked behind it. It launched its spider silk at Yi King as soon as it saw him. He ran away as it bombarded him with spider silk attacks. He acknowledged that it had fire resistance immunity, so he couldn't use that to his advantage at all. He changed direction and lunged towards it. He declared that if that was the case, he would just kill it directly. Yi King slashed the broodmother's head, and the system notified that he dealt a critical hit on its weakness. It roared in pain. He remarked that while the level 5 demonized spider seems to possess venomous bites, it seems like the level 20 broodmother lost that along with their resistance to poison, and surprisingly, it became a weakness. He speculated that it was due to the changes in their defenses and their ability to breed, no longer relying on their own abilities to hunt, and they could just send out the demonized spiders to do the hunting. Even more ironic is that those spiders become its greatest weakness through their own poison. Suddenly, the broodmother fired its spider silk from its butt. He admitted that he didn't expect to have that option available. Unlike the precise spider silks from earlier, the spider silk from its butt sprayed all over the place, and it hit him. He was caught, and he gained the debuff, Slowed. The broodmother approached him. He activated his berserk mode. He managed to break free from the restraints with his strength. He lunged at the broodmother. A loud boom reverberated through the area as he landed a punch on its face. The punch was so powerful that it tore through its flesh. The system notified that the berserk card could be leveled and requested him to choose from the two routes, the splattering core, which increases the effectiveness of berserker mode. But in exchange, his health will slowly drain until he dies or the duration ends, or the unyielding rage, which increases its duration and halves its cooldown. He mentioned that typically, people would pick Unyielding Rage because it was the more stable choice. But he is running into a monster with high resistances like the broodmother there. If he chooses the Splattering Core option, he will no doubt be able to strengthen Berserk, but that health drain is a bit too crippling of a side effect. Of course, he will pick Splattering Core because with regeneration on him, he will be able to counteract the side effects, and with Splattering Core active, he will be able to harm those with strong physical resistances, and that was the selling point of that card. The broodmother dropped multiple cards. The king declared that he will be taking those. Those are equipment he could bring back from the Abyss as an official member, especially that one that he could sell for 15,000. He will recycle the rest. He obtained 20 attribute points and stood in front of the broodmother's corpse. He wondered what sort of skill he would be getting. The system notified that he obtained the rare card, Broodmother, which could summon up to 4 demonized broodlings to fight alongside him and evolve according to combat experience. He inquired if it was a summon that could choose its own evolution. On the other hand, the cannon fodder team arrived in an area filled with crystals. Zhu Tong remarked that he didn't think they would come across a mine in the abyss. Lao Zhu stated that they were highly concentrated S-rank magic crystals too, and he wondered if it was another influence of the abyss during the Red Moon state, while Chen Xingdian commented that each one of those costs a fortune. He was surprised when Lao Zhu stuck the Eye of Argos into the crystals. It marks the surrounding 60 meters radius, allowing nearby adventurers to be notified on the map. He scolded him if he was stupid and protested that they could have lived the rest of their lives showered in cash. He demanded him why he was marking it for those bastards, and he cautioned that he should forget about enjoying riches because they will have trouble staying alive if they find out they have been hogging them for themselves. Lao Zhang explained that after all, the job of Team Cannon Fodder there is to pave the way for the higher-ups, and if they die there, they will just label them as an accidental casualty, and no one will blink an eye. Chen Xingdian was speechless. He remembered his past when he shouted that the man should get out of his way because no one will care about trash like him. It was right that no one cares if he dies. He remembered the time when he saw Yi King's skill, the time when he was recycled. He concluded that it was all because of that bastard. Even if his level's wiped, it doesn't matter as long as he can get some cash in his hands. If he could get good gear to cover for his states, he could get into the main forces of the scavenge groups. It was fine if he just sneaked out with a few. Suddenly, the system notified that a trap was activated. A laser beam was released at them so quickly that they didn't have time to react. Xiaozhou was hit in the head. Lao Zhang screamed his name while Chen Xingdian exclaimed what the hell it was. Meanwhile, Yi King was still in the berserk area. He summoned a demonized broodling. He observed that the level 1 broodling seemed pretty weak, with no combat capabilities. The system notified that it could grow into a level 5 demonized spider with BP points. He noted that if he wanted that thing to survive on the battlefield, he should at least get it to level 5, so he will toss in the points. The spider was amazed. The system notified that it evolved into Silk Spider and learned Spin Web. Lao Zhu spilled his brains out on the ground, and everyone was alarmed. Chen Xingdian clarified that it was an accident. Lao Zhang remarked that his greed killed Lao Zhu. He was the pillar supporting his whole family, and he worked himself to death to provide for them, and it was all because of him. Chen Xingdian wondered if it was wrong for him to want to earn money, and complained that if he hadn't dropped to the first level, he would have been living well at that time. But he still had to hang around with a bunch of idiots. Lao Zhang labeled him a team killer, and he declared that it was not like he was any better because in that dog-eat-dog world, power and wealth are the only things of value. Luck is valuable too. Suddenly, Caesar interjected that he expressed it well and he liked his view of things. He inquired whether he had any interest in joining the Blood Oath, and added that they had space for one more. Everyone was surprised. A red-haired member called Caesar and reminded that Lao Zhu's body was still warm. Caesar remarked that death is a common sight there, and like Chen Xingdian mentioned, the powerless people could only exchange their lives for money, and wanting to earn money isn't something shameful. So as for dying, that is not something shameful either. As for those magic crystals that only appear during a red moon, they are worth whole cities, and if they bring one out, they will be set for life. But he forgot to tell him something. It was the price of taking away one of those crystals. It requires someone to offer up a humble, worthless life. The berserker raised his weapons. They pointed them at the cannon fodder team. The red-haired member clarified that what Caesar meant was that all of them are in charge of picking the magic crystals on the walls and throwing them into his basket there. He verified if they got it and threatened that they were dead meat if they ran. Lao Zhang objected that they could get killed with every crystal they picked and questioned whether that wasn't a suicide mission. Caesar reminded whether his wife doesn't urgently need money for that treatment of hers. If he implied that he was joking when he told him that he would put his life on the line to earn enough money for her treatment, he should remember that it is not a shameful thing to exchange that useless life of his for money. Lao Zhang trembled in fear as he glanced over the crystals. He braced himself as he walked towards them. His hands trembled so much as he went and attempted to grab a crystal. He suddenly apologized and admitted that he couldn't do it. He will be honest that he gambled away too much money and only came to pay his debts, and he doesn't want to die. Caesar clicked his tongue and sneered that he was useless, as expected. On the other hand, Chen Xingdian realized that Caesar completely outclassed him and he wouldn't be a match for him even when he had his full power. He recalled Caesar mentioning that the Blood Oath was recruiting and questioned if he was interested earlier, and he confessed that he was just a fire mage, but he would like to join. Caesar doubted if he mentioned that, and the necromancer confirmed that he did. Caesar commanded that Chen Xingdian should come over to him, and he agreed. He is willing to sacrifice his life for him. Caesar mocked whether he really imagined he was something and stated that he wouldn't let a piece of trash like him into his group of elites. He is a good-for-nothing team killer and would have been sentenced to death anyway, so he was just making his death have a bit more value. It was okay if he was angry because, after all, he won't leave that place alive. And he will turn them all into corpses, let the necromancers control them to collect those magic crystals. After all, they have all died once already, so a few more times isn't a big deal. And Zhu Tong concluded that they were bastards. He was enraged and was about to chime in, but Yi King advised that he shouldn't be rash. He should leave it to him, and he should wait there. He questioned how dangerous collecting those crystals could be. The necromancer scorned what kind of trash would appear at such a time. But he got nervous when Yi King reached in and touched a crystal. He picked it up, and they quickly ran away. They cursed that he was a bastard and demanded he should tell them before he took one because he was going to kill them all. The necromancer speculated if even a death trap is useless against him, and the red-haired member theorized if it was perhaps that the trap was useless after it had been activated once. Meanwhile, even if it was a death trap, if Yi King is lucky enough to fulfill the requirements, He wouldn't die but instead only be wounded, but there might even be no effect, as his luck stat should just reach the threshold for there to be no effect. He grabbed another crystal, and everyone crouched down and hid behind the stones. The system notified that the trap had not been activated, and Caesar concluded that the trap was working after all, and the brat's luck was just a lot higher than 60 points. The necromancer doubted if it was possible for a level 1 scavenger to have over 60 luck because, for most job changers, their luck won't increase by itself, and Caesar affirmed that there is only one possibility, which is that the death trap failed. The red-haired member affirmed that it has happened twice already, so that must be the case. They should look because nothing was happening. But he was shot in the head just after he finished his sentence. He fell on the ground, and the necromancer was alarmed. Caesar reasoned that discounting all other possibilities, the brat called Yi King standing in front of them must have a luck stat higher than normal people, and it could be a rare trait related to his job because in the Abyss, it is more common for their power-related stats to increase. He questioned if he could have used all of his chances to grow on something as useless as his luck stat, and he assumed that he just divided up the points equally. Caesar explained that the original plan was to turn them all into corpses he could use, but they were having a change of plan. He only needs one corpse with a high enough luck stat. As for the rest, he will get rid of their corpses. Caesar commanded that they shouldn't let even a single one escape, and the members affirmed that they understood. Lao Zhang lamented that they were done for because their opponents were qualified members of Blood Oath, so there was no way they, cannon fodders, could stand up to them, and Zhu Tong suggested that they still had time to run. Meanwhile, Chen Xingdian trembled in fear. He immediately turned and ran away with one of the crystals. Yi King inquired what he was running for when they got the numbers on their side. Lao Zhang countered that it was not the case anymore and he was a dumbass because they were already short one person. But Yi King insisted no, they were not short on men. Suddenly, the necromancer queried if they heard anything, and the berserker wondered what it was. The necromancer looked up at the direction where the noise came from. Demonized spiders rushed towards them. They screamed and exclaimed that there were monsters in there. Zhu Tong remarked that it was bad because not only do they have to contend with enemies but monsters as well. But Yi King revealed that he picked up a few spiders on the way, so they were on their side, and he questioned him if he could control spiders already and since when did that happen. Yi King used his skill, Observing Eye. He saw that the necromancer was level 20, the berserker was level 17. There were 2 level 18 hunters, a level 19 paladin. He is not entirely sure of the gap between the humans and his monsters, but his gut feeling tells him that they won't be much of an issue. However, the system notified that it was unable to identify Caesar, as it is unable to scout human enemies who are close in power. Caesar questioned if he could control the abyssal monsters and remarked that it looked like he got his own tricks through scavenging here and there. Yi King assumed that in that case, he wouldn't be much lower than his stats and possibly even higher than his. Caesar noted that if they were nothing more than level 10 monsters, they were not even worth mentioning, so they should clean the monsters first and slice them. But they should be careful not to chip the crystals. Yi King announced that there were changes of plans, and if they don't want to die, they should follow the direction Chen Xingdian ran. Lao Zhang concluded that he knew he was a dumbass, sacrificing himself to stall time like that, but it was fine as he could do that himself. He quickly ran away. Yi King remarked that he is sure Zhu Tong has his own goals for exploring the abyss, and if he doesn't want to die, he should start running. Zhu Tong declared that he will never forget his sacrifice. He also ran away, but with his one luck, he triggered another trap. A loud boom filled the place and boulders covered the entrance. Lao Zhang demanded him to explain what he did that time. He apologized and explained that ever since he entered the abyss, it has been one unlucky thing after another, and he was not sure why. On the other hand, the paladin attacked one of the spiders. He was startled. It did not dodge the attack. The paladin mocked that he will send those trash mobs off one hammer at a time. The spider's face twisted due to the force of the hit, but it quickly recovered and spit its spider silk at the paladin. He tried his best to remove the spider silk covering his eyes. He successfully removed it and finally saw. He was surprised when he saw that Yi King was about to attack him. He ridiculed that he must be dreaming for him to try to take on a level 19 at his level. But Yi King's dagger got closer to his face. He used his skill, Shield Bash. Yi King realized that his spiders were only level 10 and they were good enough to scatter their forces. But against an organized group like the Blood Oath, it was still not enough. He quickly moved behind the paladin and slashed his leg. The paladin screamed in pain. Yi King took the chance and charged forward, but the 2 hunters fired their arrows at him. He noticed the arrows. He immediately moved and dodged them. One of the hunters wondered if he dodged that, and the other responded that it doesn't seem like it. He probably wasn't aiming right, so he should adjust his speed and try again. The hunter pulled his arrow. He released it. Yi King swung his dagger when he saw the arrow coming. He cut it in half in one slash. The hunter gasped that he intercepted it. He used his skill, Great Flame Explosion. The hunters were taken aback when they saw the flames underneath their feet. The ground exploded. They admitted that he was tough.
The berserker growled that the spider counted as nothing less than a monster. He hacked off its head in one brutal swing, and the body toppled limp and useless to the dirt. He shifted his glare straight onto Zhou Tong. Zhou Tong snapped that he hadn't even struck him, so chasing him down made no sense. Lao Zhang clenched his jaw hard enough it almost cracked. He barked that Zhou Tong ought to step aside and take the berserker's blow instead. He spat a curse, blaming everything on that brat, swearing it was his fault they were trapped with no way out. If he wanted to live, then he needed to rise and swing back. He spotted too late that the berserker lunged again. He slammed his shield up fast to intercept it, but the sheer force still smashed through, tossing him like a ragdoll. He spat blood as his body slammed against jagged stone. Zhou Tong's eyes blew wide when Lao Zhang's sword stabbed into the ground right at his feet. Meanwhile, the berserker stalked forward, menace dripping with every heavy step toward battered Lao Zhang. Lao Zhang dragged himself upright and let out a jagged laugh. He muttered that stepping into the abyss had been a mistake and death was already written for him. He scoffed that debts vanished in death, so it should be swift and painless, and he dared the berserker to finish him. The berserker twisted his mouth into a grin. He raised his blade high, ready to strike Lao Zhang down. But suddenly, his swing halted in midair. He snarled that his limbs locked up and pressed if Zhou Tong had done this. Zhou Tong coolly remarked that the debuff had landed on the right target and that his immobilization technique was active, so Lao Zhang better strike now. But Lao Zhang cursed again and grumbled that he was frozen too. On the sidelines, Ye Qing puzzled over their strange fumbling. The necromancer remarked that if he hid some grand trick, his energy still had limits, and endless high-stakes clashes drained anyone. Ye Qing reasoned that summoning burned mana non-stop, and those earlier clones had already drained him heavy. Plus, the spider swarms kept bleeding his reserves. He then conjured a cup to appear in his palm. The necromancer probed what drink he had pulled out, but he dismissed it, scoffing that it mattered little, since it was far too late to refill his mana. A necromancer carried the reputation of an overwhelming S-rank class, and until the creature bound under necromancy was torn completely apart, it would keep battling without pause. Ye Qing pressed if he was messing around with corpses like some twisted puppet master. He bragged with blunt ease that his mana brimmed back to full. The dead deserved to stay quiet, resting where they belonged instead of being hauled around. He snapped into his recycling trick, pulling the corpse away, which made the necromancer reel in shock. The necromancer barked at him, demanding to know what shady art he used and where the bodies disappeared to. Ye Qing exploded forward at a speed that blurred the air. His fist cracked across the necromancer's face with raw force. The necromancer tumbled down hard, landing near where Caesar loomed. Caesar remarked with casual interest that Ye Qing's stunts had flair. No wonder he'd caught his eye outside that drink shop. Ye Qing shot back that if folks only earned a little and went their separate ways, things would be fine. But trading lives for crystals crossed the line. That ticked him off, especially when they dared to treat him like cannon fodder. Caesar taunted if he truly believed a bit of promise freed him from being fodder, mocking it as a joke since they were still his rotten lackeys, and he strutted like some saint. He reminded him this was a world that ate people, where only the ruthless stood tall. Out of nowhere, the berserker cut in, urging Zhou Tong not to kill because he was just a handyman. Zhou Tong froze, sword raised behind the berserker, uncertain. Caesar declared that, looking at the mess now, fodder like them had zero chance of walking out of the abyss together. Lao Zhang fired back that his spiel was poison, and from the moment they turned, survival was already off the table, so the only option was to grab blades and carve him down. But Zhou Tong blurted that he was just backup, and couldn't even take down a beast, let alone spill a man's blood. Caesar warned that one side of them would be wiped out here. Ye Qing chuckled sharply, claiming Caesar missed the point. All he cared about was that everyone had the right to step into the abyss and claw their way back alive. Caesar dismissed him as naive. Ye Qing braced with his arm crossed before his body, blocking Caesar's strike. The blow hurled him through the air until his body smacked against a rock. He reeled at how ridiculously strong Caesar felt, instinct screaming that this was the fiercest beast he had ever faced. Then shock gripped him when Caesar's figure already towered in front of him. Caesar's frame radiated menace, readying another crushing punch. Yeching hurled himself off the rock, dodging fast. Caesar sneered that anything before his strength was nothing but trash. The berserker pressed Zhou Tong with a mocking edge, tossing out if he was still hesitating. He snapped that Zhou Tong was pathetically weak. Zhou Tong stumbled like his legs betrayed him and slammed onto the dirt. He lost every flicker in his eyes, the raw will to cling to life. The berserker hoisted his sword high, frozen in brutal poise. Then Lao Zhang barreled into him with a desperate tackle. He barked that Zhou Tong had better do something. The berserker slashed his blade viciously, splitting into his chest. Lao Zhang spat blood and still hollered that the brat needed to step up. He hammered out if he wasn't right that Zhou Tong was powerful, bragging that he was the leader. Zhou Tong recalled when he had puffed himself up, claiming they needed a leader for their cannon fodder squad, and as a level 3 bard, he figured he was perfectly cut for that role. He admitted that he just figured being the leader meant no killing monsters with his own hands. He wouldn't have to touch those deadly things or let slip that he was actually useless, nowhere near powerful. He was just a helpless noob, begging the berserker to spare him. He remembered when a teammate ridiculed him as the only guy in the party who dealt 0 damage and grilled him if he wasn't right, that buffing gave him free experience. Another piled on, sneering he couldn't even land a buff on the right person, that he had no shame and should get out of his sight. He was nothing but a noob, told to screw off. He had sat by the fountain, crushed and hollow, when Caesar wandered over. Caesar pressed him on what job he had. Zhou Tong muttered he was just a level 3 bard. Caesar remarked that he should tag along with him. Back in the present, Yeching smashed against the wall as Caesar's punch hurled him like a rag. Before he could even find footing, Caesar lunged again, fist driving into him. Caesar explained it was a martial technique from Kang Longjin, hammering continuous trauma into the organ. And once laced with magic afterward, the wound deepened to the point sudden death was possible. That strike, after all, was a famed combat art brutal enough to cripple even a master of magic. Yeching realized it came too fast and he had to break away. Caesar taunted him, asking if he honestly believed he could run. Yeching kept wondering in this restless, half-joking way if that skill secretly carried a blood loss debuff, and he admitted to himself he wanted it real bad. He instantly tied the thought of the debuff to Zhou Tong, like the association popped up on its own. He turned to him right away without hesitation. Caesar drove a punch square into Yeching and blasted him through the air. Yeching slammed down right in front of Zhou Tong with brutal timing. He declared with a sting that it was pointless trying to scrape off weakness and incompetence, begging for handouts, because he had dreamed of power harder than anyone else. He confessed that disappointment in his own failures had been gnawing at him the whole time. He spat that he really was too useless, but he refused to back down because weakness alone wasn't the real terror. What chilled him more was the risk of his own heart collapsing into weakness. Zhou Tong pressed him on what he meant by his heart. Yeching dragged up the bitter memory of dealing only 0 damage and hammered out his refusal again and again. He swung his busted sword with desperate force while the monster's tentacle coiled around him. He smashed its eye, and against the odds, landed a critical hit worth a single point of damage. He cried out that it actually worked. Snapping back to the present, he explained that when he first gathered courage to move, he already understood the truth. He had spent his life preparing to be king, even if that life had been nothing more than a trash picker's grind. Zhou Tong challenged him by asking if he would really become king. He shot back that if he failed to grow stronger, death would come, and ducking fights in disguise beat being mocked. He burned with the claim that he wanted strength and craved to be a strong person. The berserker scoffed and ridiculed the idea, mocking how a level 3 support could ever pierce his level 17 armor, before taunting that he'd stand still to let him try. But Zhou Tong hurled the sword aside instead. The berserker stared, baffled and thrown off balance. Zhou Tong conjured a microphone in a strange twist. He announced that poetry was the ultimate dispersion. The berserker froze, rattled to his core. Caesar blurted out, demanding to know what was happening. Yeching revealed it was because he had gained the best support in the world. He triggered the inspiration status, and with that, the blood nightmare erupted into being. The blood nightmare instantly sank beneath the ground like liquid shadow. It rose behind the berserker without warning. The berserker startled hard, nerves jangling. Before he could counter, the blood nightmare's tentacles locked around him. The berserker barked that it should release him right away. Zhou Tong just stared with a detached calm while he screamed in raw agony. He then shifted his gaze toward Ye Qing with sharp focus. Caesar declared in a flat, lethal tone that he ought to die. Ye Qing barely slipped past his incoming punch by sidestepping quick. He figured that with so much magic flooding the air, his body patched itself at a rapid pace. He then triggered his berserk mode, splattering gore, the name alone dripping menace. He braced against Caesar's fist with his battered dagger. He then slashed in return and the blade clipped a piece of his shoulder. Caesar puzzled over whether his armor failed him and if that ragged dagger had pierced it. Meanwhile, Ye Qing calculated that the splattering gore skill, which ramped up defense, had been a lifesaver, though the blood-draining debuff clung stubbornly. That brutal clash needed to reach its conclusion fast. Caesar remarked with a twisted grin that this was getting interesting. Ye Qing lashed his dagger at him once more, and Caesar slipped out of range this time. He pressed bitterly how he could possibly lose in skills to a brat after 20 years of training. He demanded if Ye Qing already tasted the gap in their strength. He lectured that martial artists could climb the upgrade ladder, becoming either a strength-fueled destruction king or a finesse-driven street fighter. Ye Qing steadied himself, flung aside his dagger, and curled his fist tight. He drove his knuckles straight into Caesar's fist. He clenched his jaw, grinding against the jolt of searing impact. Caesar bragged that since he despised those flimsy skill-based routes, he had poured every point into destructive force. He then unleashed his instant kill, heaven-breaking punch with devastating intent. Zhou Tong witnessed Ye Qing smash into the rocks in front, but Ye Qing somehow landed on his feet, defying the blow. Caesar mocked him as a fool for meeting an instant kill head-on, pressing if he really believed he could outmuscle him. Suddenly, Ye Qing shouted that he would dump every single point into strength. The system blared that all 176 free points had been stacked onto strength. Caesar barked out his confusion, demanding to know what that sudden strength boost even was. Meanwhile, Ye Qing figured with a jolt of satisfaction that his strength stats spiked instantly, and even his muscle mass seemed to bulk up in a subtle but noticeable way. Caesar burst out with a laugh and tossed off a remark that it didn't matter anyway. Ye Qing mulled over how he still had no clue about the real impact of a martial artist's combat skills when it came to pure destructive force. But piling up 300 free points in one shot felt like enough raw power to smash through with a single punch. Caesar practically vibrated with excitement as he swung his fists like he was dying to prove something. Their fists slammed together once again, sparking the clash. But this time, Caesar's fist buckled under the pressure like crushed paper. Ye Qing blasted him off his feet and hurled him through the air. Caesar pressed with wide-eyed disbelief, demanding how Ye Qing managed to pull off that kind of brutal, skill-less strike. On the sidelines, Zhou Tong marveled silently, thinking he was terrifyingly strong. Back in the fight, Ye Qing launched himself upward with a sharp push from the ground. He hammered his fist straight into Caesar's face with zero hesitation. He declared with cold urgency that there wouldn't be any spare time for Caesar to be shocked, since this battle needed to finish fast. From that day forward, he could count himself shoved into the ranks of the cannon fodder team. Caesar's mind drifted back 8 years, replaying the moment someone told him to wipe out all the equipment since tougher dungeons were waiting ahead. That same voice had ordered him to scrub everything spotless, reminding him that the creed of the lion-hearted hunters meant only the weak got stuck shining shoes. If he wanted to rise as an official member, he had to prove himself. But seeing the reality now, they looked doomed to rot as cannon fodder for the rest of their lives. Moments later, the hunters locked into a brawl against a monster. Caesar clenched his resolve, figuring if he proved he wasn't useless, he could claw his way out of the novice tier. So he swore to prove it. He lunged forward and smashed a punch across the monster's face. He threw in a cocky comment that it didn't seem all that tough, but to his shock, the monster got right back up on its feet. It instantly slammed him flat against the ground with bone-crushing force. He dropped unconscious, his body flattened and mangled. Time skipped ahead and the doctor laid out the brutal list. Mandible shattered, 8 ribs broken, heart pierced, liver, spleen, and kidneys wrecked. Plus, the gear he wore had burned through a mountain of magic crystals. Caesar barely clung to life, suspended inside a glass cylinder brimming with water. The doctor explained with clinical precision that abyssal technology could already harvest enhanced cells from abyssal beasts and transplant them into human hosts, and by sheer coincidence, his DNA matched the monster's. The upside was survival, but the downside cut sharp. He'd now be cursed as a mixed breed. The group leader remarked that Caesar had fully proved himself worthy of joining Lionheart as an official member. He should wear that mark proudly and serve as his extra arm, loyal as a chained beast. Caesar pressed about where his teammates had gone. The group leader replied that those useless brats had already met their end. Caesar figured this was a world ready to swallow people whole without warning. Now, in the present, he realized he'd be treated like trash if he couldn't prove his worth. He triggered his unshakable, and his defense thickened while his destructive force and speed exploded upward. Yeqing grew alarmed. He wondered if it had recovered completely. He slid sideways to dodge the blow, but it scraped his chest. The hit hurled him backward with crushing force. Caesar remarked that the core of magic crystals was condensed energy and raw magic power, and under the blood moon those crystals became dangerously potent. Because of the grafted monster organs, he could drain their strength as his own, and he could surge beyond the boss level of the abyss if only for a moment. The system alerted Yeqing that a boss had been detected. Rodrigo Caesar had appeared. It also warned that Berserk mode had ended, throwing him into a 30-second exhaustion state, and he muttered that he'd been marked as a boss-level monster by the system, then cursed the timing as he wondered what happened to that guy's body. Caesar remarked that all it took was tossing aside human dignity. Meanwhile, Yeqing shot a look at Zhou Tong and he seemed to catch it. Caesar continued, claiming he had abandoned his human body and turned into a monster stripped of morals. Yeqing and Zhou Tong rushed aside to dodge the raining stones. Caesar declared he had accepted the cost of that power. Yeqing darted a nervous glance over his shoulder. Caesar lunged at him in a blur and ripped through his body completely. Zhou Tong figured he was terrifyingly strong. Clearly they, trash, had no way to resist truly powerful players, and Yeqing, though hidden strength ran deep within him, still couldn't match that might and could be crushed in a single strike. Even drained of power, he still triggered that unshakable force, his body moving by instinct, and he muttered that the weak always bowed before the strong. It never changed. Caesar stated that one had to reveal that ugly side to grow stronger, and he almost forgot one tiny thing. Zhou Tong stammered that he never saw anything about him turning ugly, but Caesar mentioned he botched that magic crystal harvest anyway, and was the last cannon fodder left to witness that disaster. He should let him die like a hero. But Zhou Tong protested that he should hold up, since he still had something to say if death was unavoidable. Caesar sneered that the trash bard talked too much. He pressed if he had any last words. Zhou Tong murmured that he wanted to leave the abyss alive. Meanwhile, the blood on the ground began to fuse together. Zhou Tong added that maybe he wasn't the only cannon fodder who'd seen that tragedy. Caesar caught sight of the pooling blood forming behind him. Yeqing remarked that the bard had bought him extra time, and the exhaustion had just been cleared by that drink. He couldn't read Caesar's body through his observing eye before, so he had relied on the blood nightmares traits to uncover hidden data by making contact. Caesar demanded if the guy he'd killed had been a clone all along and since when that trick started. Yeqing commented that the cost of those superhuman powers might be steeper than expected. And though the Berserker's combat boost heightened strength in bursts, the toll for forcing that power past physical limits was 30 seconds of collapse. But he, existing on the edge between man and monster, had reached greedily into the abyss, and the abyss naturally wanted its payment. Caesar barked that it was his own strength, not the abyss's business, and pressed what that had to do with it. And then he noticed horns pushing out along his arm. He roared as the limb twisted into a monstrous form. While he stared at it in shock, Zhou Tong bolted away at once. Meanwhile, Yeqing simply watched him in calm detachment. Caesar snapped at him sharply. He then hurled himself forward with a savage charge. Yeqing sprang upward and used Caesar's head as leverage to propel himself higher out of reach. He then quickly slipped back to create distance. He reasoned that the altered body shape had slowed him down. Caesar kept lashing out, and Yeqing managed to evade every blow. Yeqing wished hard for a weapon right then. Out of nowhere, Zhou Tong called to him. The sound drew Yeqing's focus. Zhou Tong flung a dagger toward him and barked that he better catch it. Yeqing barely snagged it before the blade could pierce his face. Yeqing quickly stepped back when Caesar lunged at him. He leapt upward, twisting his body mid-air with a sharp swing of his arm to shift his position. He came down behind him and slashed across his back with clean precision. He landed on his feet, steady as if the ground waited for him. Caesar barked whether every hit had to be a critical one. Yeqing remarked that he shouldn't forget he was still someone beneath his notice, claiming he'd only tossed a few points into agility. Caesar warned that mocking him would make his death far worse, declaring himself a higher existence. Yeqing bent backward with an easy curve to dodge the next strike. He pressed him about what higher existence he meant. He declared that from where he stood, the guy was nothing short of a monster. Caesar howled, raw pain tearing from his throat, his face twisted beyond recognition. He had turned completely monstrous. Yeqing remarked that he'd gone too far and there was no saving him, since mutation had consumed him whole. He then asked if he could hear the abyss calling. Caesar spat that they should die, and stopped dragging him down, claiming he had already proved himself, and demanding why they wouldn't release him. He insisted he wasn't cannon fodder and refused to die that way. Zhou Tong muttered that he'd lost his mind, saying it was their shot. Yeqing recalled what had happened earlier. Caesar had been laughing then while ripping his own body apart. Yeqing turned to Zhou Tong and told him the blood nightmare was swapping out his body. Zhou Tong groaned that he thought he was done for when the system announced his challenge to win the battle without killing Caesar for rare rewards, which made him curse silently and wonder how that could work. He figured the lunatic wouldn't survive anyway. Even his teammates wouldn't spare him if they saw that state, but then reasoned that completing the challenge could grant rare loot, so he might as well try. He told Zhou Tong to remember his words and distract Caesar for just 5 seconds. Back in the present, Yeqing declared there was no need to kill him. He said monsters belonged to the abyss and couldn't leave it. Those who surrendered their humanity and fell into it would be embraced by it all the same. That was the abyss's law. He had heard monsters went berserk under the blood moon, yet that night, it was a person who broke into madness. Meanwhile, Chen Xingdian cursed that the whole thing was chaos, though if he survived, fortune would finally roll his way, and his time to rise had come. He grinned that the place overflowed with treasure. He was finally rich, free, armed, and reborn. He could wrestle fate itself and change his life. A few days later, Yeqing and Zhou Tong sat drinking in a bar. Zhou Tong requested to call him boss and vowed to follow him from then on. Yeqing waved it off, saying he couldn't handle something that heavy. But Zhou Tong reminded him that since he'd once claimed he was preparing to become a king, he'd decided to stick by him for life. Yeqing admitted he'd just been showing off back then, realizing how ridiculous it sounded now. Zhou Tong countered that it wasn't, because that moment gave him the drive to see his own worth and direction. Yeqing then asked what his plans were, and Zhou Tong quipped that he'd said before he was the best support, prompting Yeqing to ask when that happened. Zhou Tong declared he wanted to become the king of supports. Yeqing found it wild that someone with agility 2 and luck 1 still held a battlefield spot, but pushing him to fight up front would only get him hurt. Zhou Tong argued he should picture himself at the front, while he strengthened him from behind so they could fight as a team. Yet, Yeqing told him he shouldn't keep entering the abysses. Zhou Tong frowned, asking what he meant. Yeqing reasoned that if his skill only made others stronger while he stayed weak enough to need guarding, that wasn't true support, and he apologized but didn't want him risking his life again. He gestured toward him. He said the pouch held all his magic crystals, enough to last him a long time, but made him promise never to step into an abyss again. Zhou Tong nodded that he understood it was said for his sake, but he couldn't accept wasting away in that world, and even if he died, he refused to be looked down on. Yeqing found that conviction hard to refuse, and asked how he could protect anyone if he couldn't protect himself. He reminded him that his microphone took only one hand. He told him it was Lao Li's sword. From what he knew about bards, their craft was half magic and half physical, letting them wield magic weapons for buffing and debuffing while mastering a few attack spells too. If he couldn't swing Lao Li's sword before, he should try now, since that debt needed repayment. Zhou Tong admitted he didn't actually need those crystals. Yeqing told him to hand them to Lao Li's and Lao Ju's families instead, since they'd earn plenty later anyway. Zhou Tong agreed quietly. 3 Lionheart members gathered before the dungeon's dark entrance. One of them mentioned that squads of S-rank job changers had been sent into the abyss after the Blood Red Moon incident, where they discovered 8 bodies identified as members of Blood Oath. Caesar, their leader, had mutated into a monster through abyssal corruption and was put down accordingly. They had also found more bodies, one identified, and the leader demanded to know who it was. She explained that it was the one always accused of being a team killer during the abyssal invasions, Chen Xingdian. High-quality gear had been located near his remains, suggesting he encountered the corrupted corpse of his former squad leader and died in combat, an unforeseen twist still within their expectations. The leader asked if that was the only anomaly, and she replied that yes, it should just be him, and he acknowledged it. Another member questioned if their plan had failed, but the leader dismissed the concern, saying Caesar was a small fry who hadn't proven his worth, and they could always find others like him. Meanwhile, at Shenfeng People's Hospital, a patient was struggling in distress. The hallway crowd had no clue about his torment. Even the doctors passed his room without a glance. He pleaded for forgiveness, insisting their dad had no choice. He had to repeat the act back then. He activated the key gripped in his hand. A portal burst open instantly. People on the street screamed, demanding to know what was happening. Someone recognized the phenomenon at the hospital. He shouted that it was an abyssal gate and urged someone to contact the officials. At the same time, the young Ye Qing urged Ye Xiaozhou to hold on tight and listen to her brother without looking back. She had to run. He screamed as the monster's impact hurled them apart. He hit the ground hard. Ye Xiaozhou called out to him, and he saw her being devoured by the creature. Back in the present, Ye Qing screamed awake from the nightmare. He gasped for breath. He muttered that it was that dream again. Then, realization hit, and he murmured that he'd nearly forgotten that day. Moments later, he went to the flower shop. He greeted Miss Zhang, saying he wanted his usual bouquet, and she guessed he was visiting his sister. He confirmed it, explaining they'd had an unfortunate accident there. She commented that his sister was lucky to have a brother like him, then noticed his new haircut, and told him it didn't look bad. He mentioned being stopped by Mr. Military Buff on his way. Figured she was arranging things outside too and offered to help. She thanked him. A bit later, he stepped out, carrying the bouquet. Miss Zhang remarked she'd seen lots of vehicles heading toward the hospital, job changers by the look of it, and wondered if something was going on. Ye Qing asked if it was the hospital. Without hesitation, he leaped into the air, dropping the bouquet. He bounded across rooftops, rushing toward the hospital. When he arrived, job changers were shouting to raise the speed barricades. Ye Qing demanded to know why an abyssal gate was there. He approached one of the security personnel. The man explained that citizens were being told to stay back since the area was under lockdown. But Ye Qing's presence alone made him freeze up. He simply watched in silence as Ye Qing walked past. Another guard questioned why he'd just let a random guy through. The first one muttered that he shouldn't ask. That man and the ones before him weren't people they could afford to cross. The other just nodded. Ye Qing muttered that she should wait for him. Her brother wouldn't fail her this time. Inside, he observed that the place was under abyssification. The hospital warped into another dimension. The space stretched far beyond its original structure, just like the mall incident before. The room ahead had been cleared, likely by the squad that entered earlier. They seemed well-equipped too, judging by the expensive magic bottle they'd used. Something not just any job changer could buy. He retrieved it, the effective magic bottle. He noted that even if he went alone into the abyss to find Ye Xiaozhou, the mana drain would be immense, so he had to prepare carefully. Later, he came across a forked path. Activating his scouting vision, he received a system notice that both routes led to a point of no return, forcing him to choose one. Fresh marks lined the walls, likely from the rescue squad before him, so, assuming they'd taken one route already, he'd go the other to increase Ye Xiaozhou's chances. He had no clue how long it would take, and if things went bad, he'd have to comb the entire place. There was no time to waste. Ordinary people wouldn't last long in there, so he pressed forward without hesitation. Ye Qing remarked that the fresh red carpet suggested the place hadn't been stepped on yet. The path behind had been swallowed by darkness, forming a wall that stopped him cold. He'd seen that prop's ability before and figured that if he was stuck in a maze, he could mark out sections on the map. The system notified him that he'd activated the Eye of Argos, and he muttered that it should open the map. It then flashed a notice saying it couldn't display anything outside that zone. He grumbled that it made sense why others preferred carving marks with blades, since in that abyss maze, the system's guidance was totally useless. Probably what they called the Abyss of Rule. He asked if this was some kind of trap room, but he quickly denied it, mentioning he hadn't caught any sounds of mechanisms. That room was just unnervingly silent. Without him noticing, a demon spirit crept up and swung its scythe toward his back. Luckily, he caught the movement in time and dodged. He regained his footing fast. He countered and split the thing in two, but the system flashed that the attack didn't work. He demanded to know if it had physical immunity. The demon spirit let out a vicious roar. The system alerted him that he was deafened, and he muttered that he couldn't hear now, and his perception had dropped hard. He realized he'd nearly underestimated the abyss's danger. What stood before him now was a monster of rule. He recalled facing one 3 years ago. Terror hit him again when he'd seen the dark figures among the rock pile back then. He admitted it freaked him out. They were only statues, and he'd thought he was supposed to fight monsters. He couldn't afford to waste even one attack, but then something felt wrong, so he whipped his head around. The statues had frozen still, yet their creepy grins were locked on him. He wondered if he'd imagined it, and if they hadn't been up there a moment ago. A colleague warned that he shouldn't turn, shouldn't look away, shouldn't blink. Those things were weeping stone statues. Yeching asked what that meant and remarked that just the name made his scalp tingle. The colleague told him to focus on them, not him, and he agreed. The colleague explained that abyss monsters followed their own rules and logic, and the stronger they were, the stricter the logic. The weeping stone statues before them were S-class, normally passive toward job changers, but their rule bound them. Once seen, they froze as statues and locked their gaze on him. If he broke eye contact, they'd charge fast enough to shred most job changers instantly, so Yeching pressed for what to do next. The colleague instructed him to follow his lead, back out slowly and never blink, and Yeching affirmed he got it. They both eased backward. Then Yeching stumbled over a rock. He fell backward, helpless. The statues lunged right at him. The colleague bolted toward a lever. He yanked it down. The statues got sealed inside. Yeching trembled with relief. The colleague remarked he'd been lucky, and that if he'd attacked one like others had, he'd discover he couldn't scratch it before dying instantly. Even if those things were scavengers with weak offense, their experience wasn't any less than most job changers. Now, in the present, Yeching gathered power in his fist. He muttered that if the thing had a physical immunity rule, maybe magic was its weakness. He unleashed a great flame explosion, but the fire spiraled out of control. He cursed, shouting that it was too hot, and asked if fire control had gone haywire. Too bad fire was his only mastered magic. He froze when he caught the scythe flashing toward his neck. He instantly triggered Spirit Dash to slip away. He said the boat still hadn't been found, and there was no way he'd just rot in that first room. The demon spirit might have physical immunity, but since its offense was physical too, that combo was weird. He vaulted into the air to dodge another strike. The demon spirit barreled after him non-stop. He raised his dagger and blocked another blow. He muttered that he managed to hold it off. Yeching figured he finally caught the rhythm of the rules, that the demon spirit only showed up when someone went for a strike. The scythe still hung there, stripped of the rule's safety that once made physical hits useless. He launched a counterattack without hesitation. He figured that right then brute force was the thing's weak spot. The demon spirit's form scattered apart, but the fragments crawled back together. It tore open a portal. Another demon spirit crawled out. Yeching wondered if this was a second form and figured that was kind of fascinating. The demon spirit's aura swelled until the whole space drowned in darkness. Yeching figured that after that ear-splitting scream, even his sight glitched, so he considered cutting off the blood clone early just to stay alive. But then he decided against it. He just used it, and that skill needed a good 30 seconds to cool down. Plus, his mana was nearly drained from the constant summons. The demon spirit lunged, and he barely caught the blow in time. He figured he couldn't react fast enough anyway, that he dodged death by pure luck, and now he was up against an assassin his stacked stats couldn't crush. He whipped out his man-eating plant card for some healing. The system hit him with a notice that his wounds and deafness were gone, and he figured he'd better boost his HP so a single strike wouldn't end him. Out of nowhere, the demon spirit flinched in terror. He remarked that its second form feared bright things. Even the faint glow from healing magic sent it backing off. He got it then. The demon spirit sneered. Yeching clenched his hand, ramping up the flames. He coated himself in fire. The demon spirit froze in surprise. The system warned that he was burning, and Yeching declared that things finally got exciting. The demon spirit shrieked in fear, and he gave chase. He remarked that it feared flames because that was its own life's origin. It used to be a soul burned alive, and yet the fire element had turned cursed, unusable. He pulled his Spirit Dash card. He grinned that if he couldn't throw a fireball, he'd just become one. He detonated with great flame explosion. His blaze tore the air apart in a massive blast. He hit the ground while the demon spirit thrashed in agony. The system announced its defeat and that his HP had dropped under 1/10. His arm was scorched beyond use, no weapon handling, no spell casting, and he muttered that the win came at a steep price, so he'd better wait until the regeneration cooldown finished before patching up. But he shouldn't let the corpse burn away since he still needed it for recycle. He activated it right away. He received the artifact Soul Reaper, a summon that unleashed a huge scythe harvest. But if the strike didn't kill, the backlash equaled the dealt damage, and artifacts were soulbound, not tradable. Yeqing remarked that the card drops this time were unusual. It was the first soulbound artifact he'd ever pulled. The soul harvesting blade could siphon slain targets into health and mana, and dropped in a crowd, it could wipe the field clean. Though if the attack missed a kill, he'd take the hit instead, maybe even die on the spot, so his timing had to be flawless. The gate had already unsealed. The system pinged that regeneration's cooldown ended, and he fired it up right away. He declared that he was coming for Xiaozhou. Meanwhile, a butcher was hacking through victims without mercy. He dunked an arm into a bucket. Xiaozhou watched him nervously clutching a bottle. She hurled it across the room. The butcher turned toward the crash. She summoned her nerve and stepped out from hiding. Then she stumbled, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot through her. But she spotted her teddy bear lying ahead. She vowed that she'd never let her brother be bullied. Then the butcher crushed it under his boot. He fixed those vicious eyes on her. He bellowed a roar that shook the air. Xiaozhou lay helpless before the butcher, unable to move. She called out for her brother, pleading for him to save her. As the butcher lifted his cleaver, Wu Ming sprang into the air and drove himself at the man from behind. The butcher froze, wide-eyed, when pain split his body from the strike of Wu Ming's sword. With a single sweeping cut, Wu Ming sliced him clean in half. Xiaozhou flinched as the sword's tip struck the ground right before her. The Dual Swordsman Wu Ming stood before her, his face blank and unreadable. He noticed her only when she exhaled in shaky relief, murmuring that it was a hunter. He brushed her off and turned to leave, so she called out, desperate. She begged him to take her along. He replied flatly that there were no monsters left she could hide, but if she followed, she'd surely die. She insisted she had to stay alive until she saw her brother again. Because of that promise. 7 years earlier, the doctor explained that her spinal nerves had been gravely damaged, fearing she'd never walk normally again, though it was a miracle she could still move her upper body. Yeqing pressed him, asking if that meant she couldn't stand up either. The doctor confirmed it, saying spinal nerve injuries were theoretically irreversible. Theoretically, at least. And Yeqing demanded to know what he meant by that. He pushed further, asking if it meant that there was still a chance and what he should do. The doctors said theoretically meant science couldn't fix it, but he'd heard of blind patients regaining sight in the abyss, and maybe in the new abyssal worlds, some medicine or device might exist to heal the incurable. The power there didn't obey science, so if her injury came from a monster in the abyss, perhaps the cure was there too. Yeqing repeated that if that was true, then with the strength to enter the abyss, he could heal his sister. The doctor scoffed, calling him an idiot. Only job changers could enter, and someone without a level like him would be walking to his death. Better to worry about the reality before him, since even standard hospital care cost around 8,000 yuan a day. Yeqing vowed he'd find the money somehow and begged the doctor to look after his sister. The doctor promised to do his best but reminded him that the bills had to be paid on time, and Yeqing nodded, saying he'd bring the full amount soon. Out in the hallway, one nurse whispered to another, confirming it was him. Both his parents had died that same day, and his sister was crippled. He was all alone, and the nurse murmured that she pitied him. Yeqing grinned before nudging open the door to Xiaozhou's room. As he stepped in, his voice brightened, calling out that her brother had arrived. She pressed him about where he'd gone. He replied that he'd gone to consult the doctor, and added that he'd soon head to a place called the Abyss. She probed about the abyss, wondering if it was safe. He reassured her with a nod, saying it wasn't dangerous at all, he just needed to trail behind others. But then, he remembered, he wouldn't be around every day for a while, so the stuffed bear would guard her in his place. She protested that he was the only family left and didn't want him in danger again, begging him to avoid places crawling with monsters. He told her there was no choice, that he'd found a high-paying job, enough to cure her legs, so if she waited just a bit longer, she'd be able to stand again. She countered that if her brother had to gamble his life for money, she'd rather stay in her wheelchair forever, making him promise never to enter a monster-infested place. It became their pinky vow, and he assured her he wouldn't risk himself. It was their pact. Now, in the present, she muttered that if she stayed in the abyss, her brother would surely find a way to reach her, and she refused to let him endanger himself again, so she couldn't die, and neither could her brother. Wu Ming remarked that her grip on life was curious. If a monster attacked her, he wouldn't step in. She was quietly grateful her wheelchair survived intact. He pointed out that she wasn't his client, so whether she lied or died didn't matter, and she told him to just mind his business. She'd follow at a distance and not be a burden. He introduced himself as a Dual Swordsman. Meanwhile, Yetching recalled that even after working tirelessly as a scavenger and finding many potions that could mend injuries, none could fix wounds inflicted before entering the abyss, except in rare cases. One of the abyss's iron rules was that no one could heal beyond the state they had upon entry. If burns existed before stepping in, they stayed burned just as they were. Otherwise, he'd have cured Xiaozhou long ago. Then he froze, staring at the lifeless Job changers scattered on the ground. He muttered that a fierce battle must have erupted, the monsters far stronger than the job changers. So their annihilation made sense. There were no monster tracks, meaning maybe one survivor escaped. His breath hitched when he caught sight of the colossal beast ahead. He wondered aloud if that giant thing had truly been cleaved in half with one strike, and noted that his observing eye couldn't sense a shred of magic. Most of the fallen were agility and intelligence types, so he speculated it had been raw brute force. He concluded that someone far beyond all other job changers existed, someone whose strength crushed bones. Wu Ming strolled through the abyss, and Xiaozhou rolled behind him in her wheelchair. She jolted when he froze mid-step. He caught sight of something slicing toward him from the side. He didn't even flinch, just took the hit straight on. Xiaozhou shrieked in panic, but no blood spilled from his wounds. They sealed themselves up, leaving him unscathed. Xiaozhou pressed him if they should keep moving and if it hurt. He blinked, baffled. 4 years earlier, in the ancient tomb A-class abyss, the boss-level king had gripped a job changer by the head and throat. He howled in agony. The king tore his head clean off. Wu Ming stayed tense. Their commissioner barked that they were fools, snapping about whether he paid them this much just to swallow trash, reminding them that as mercenaries, they were supposed to charge in and earn their pay. He hammered that their lives were ones he'd bought for double the price. Since he was a criminal with no legal status, Wu Ming could only sign up with a private hunting squad, and in that bunch of maniacs, a few were totally numb to life or death, taking suicide-tier missions for twice the cash. The commissioner declared that whoever killed the overlord would earn 100,000 credits because he couldn't afford to lose that last treasure, then corrected himself and bumped it to 200,000. Double-pay swordsmen were all gamblers, ready to stake it all like addicts, doubling bets until their heads spun, and they demanded 250,000, all in cash. Another chimed in to take the deal for 250,000, and the commissioner agreed, promising that whoever landed the kill got the payout. The king unleashed its skill. It summoned more monsters to the field. The commissioner yelled that for 250,000 they'd better slaughter those things for him. 2 mercenaries managed to reach the king and were just about to strike, but the king didn't even flinch. With one smooth motion, it shredded them to pieces. Then, the king's gaze locked on Wu Ming. It swung a massive fist. The blow smashed into his face and sent him tumbling through the air. Then, it turned on the commissioner. The commissioner barked that Wu Ming had better save him since payment depended on him getting out alive. He roared that he was the one who bought their lives. As the king lunged for the commissioner, Wu Ming charged right after. He brought his sword down with everything he had. The blade hit, but couldn't cut through. He forced out every last ounce of strength. He finally brought the king down, and a chest along with an item dropped to the ground. The commissioner snapped that he should move aside, not block him, and let him open the box. Wu Ming reminded him the pay was supposed to be double, but the commissioner scoffed that he was already a walking corpse, asking what use money had for him. Was he planning to spend it in another world? He bragged that he'd soon be rich and hadn't wasted money buying intel on the hidden abyss for nothing. Light spilled out when he cracked the chest open. Then he froze, staring down. He cursed, demanding to know why it was empty. He fumed that he'd gone through all that effort for nothing. Wu Ming's gut clenched when he saw the commissioner choking. It was a sand spell. He questioned whether it was cursed for real. He wondered if he was hit too. He realized it was the Corpse King Jewel, a soul-binding relic that turned its wielder into an undead being. immune to mortal harm but vulnerable to holy magic, unable to feel pain or emotion ever again. He had become someone who could not die. Now, in the present, Xiaozhou asked if his blood was actually sand and what curse he carried. He just fixed his gaze on her. She pressed again, wanting to know why he was ignoring her.